Do you want Leon to use the prayer wheel once? After hearing the request of the red-haired director, Mr. Torres's expression paused slightly, and a trace of hesitation appeared on his face. Noticing the change in Mr. Torres's expression, Leon couldn't help but raise his eyebrows slightly, feeling a curious interest in this prayer wheel. If Aquarius is the father of the female reporter, then Mr. Torres is like the mother to our director, taking extraordinary care of her. Given their relationship, even for a precious abnormal object, Mr. Torres would agree without a second thought. And now, the director is not even asking for something for herself, just to borrow the prayer wheel. Yet Mr. Torres hesitates. This prayer wheel must be quite remarkable. Olivia. Under Leon's curious gaze, Mr. Torres hesitated for a moment before finally speaking instead of agreeing directly. If I convince Director Sagittarius to lend out the prayer wheel, how do you intend to use it? Of course, we would only make the most basic wish. Seeing Mr. Torres's attitude soften, the red-haired director couldn't help but be slightly pleased, patting her chest as she promised. Isn't Leon in need of a suitable abnormal object? I plan to let him spin the material wheel once to find him a suitable abnormal object, and we won't touch the higher-level floating life wheel or fate wheel. Just the most basic material wheel? After hearing the red-haired director's promise, Mr. Torres's expression relaxed slightly, but after glancing at Leon, he still said with some concern, "But you, sorry, this might sound harsh, but each of you harbors regrets in your hearts. If the prayer wheel is handed over to you entirely, I'm not sure if you can resist the temptation to use it." "You're underestimating me," the red-haired director retorted, feeling a bit indignant. "Leon's will might be a bit weak, but I'm the director of the Zodiac branch office. Haven't I been through enough over the years? Even a true god specializing in souls couldn't shake my will. It is firm." "Yeah, right. A true god might not shake your will, but a good bottle of wine might." Watching the red-haired director's confident face, Mr. Torres couldn't help but move his lips, then involuntarily glanced at the red-haired director's lips, and finally, couldn't help but glance at Leon. Seeing where Mr. Torres's gaze landed, Leon suddenly felt uneasy, realizing she was thinking of the director's birthday when they tried to bypass Mr. Torres's word spirit with their tongue, and ended up drinking a mouthful of chili oil. He could only return an awkward smile. "Let's drop it." Recalling the troublemaking drunk duo traits of Leon and the director, Mr. Torres immediately squashed the idea of trusting them this once, resolutely refusing. "The prayer wheel is too significant for you two to have. The bureau is busy, and if you two mess around, no one will clean up your mess. As for Leon's abnormal object, I haven't discussed with Director Sagittarius about the task of investigating the Kralik Kingdom yet. It might take some time to settle. You can wait. I will look for a suitable abnormal object. That's it. I have things to do." Worried that the red-haired director would continue her persistence, after refusing her request, Mr. Torres didn't wait for her to protest and directly turned off the celestial globe mirror, forcibly ending the communication. "What a pity. We almost convinced her." Seeing that the persistence didn't succeed, the red-haired director couldn't help but sigh in disappointment, and before Leon could ask, she directly explained. "The prayer wheel I wanted to borrow for you is abnormal object number 005, one of the most important trump cards in the Bureau. To put it simply, it's a kind of omnipotent wishing machine, capable of fulfilling almost every wish of the user." An omnipotent wishing machine? The cleanup bureau actually has such a thing? Hearing this, Leon couldn't help but ask curiously, "Director, can the prayer wheel really fulfill any wish? Is it that powerful?" "It can almost fulfill all wishes." Correcting Leon's statement, the red-haired director explained, "Strictly speaking, the prayer wheel doesn't directly fulfill all your wishes. Instead, after you make a wish, it tells you how to achieve that wish. Theoretically, no matter how outrageous the wish, as long as there is even the slightest possibility of realization, it can tell you how to achieve it by spinning the prayer wheel, ensuring success if followed. My goodness, even if it doesn't directly fulfill wishes, the fact that it always provides the correct answer is already quite game-breaking." After pondering the meaning of this, Leon couldn't help but click his tongue and say, "So, it's like a natural all-knower that always provides an answer?" "Not entirely all-knowing." The red-haired director shook her head. "If you want a suitable abnormal object, simply with that thought, spinning the outermost material wheel will reveal its location. If you aim to become the king of a country, then you must spin the floating life wheel and ask how to become king. In short, the wishes and questions you propose cannot be overly ambiguous or bizarre, and must fit within the scope of its 17 wheels for the prayer wheel to respond." "That's still quite impressive, though," Leon couldn't help but exclaim. "Just being able to always provide the correct answer makes it unsurpassed. By the way, Director, since it's so powerful, why doesn't the Bureau use it more often instead of sealing it away?" Regarding that, when I first learned about the prayer wheel's existence, I asked Mr. Torres the same question. Frowning as she recalled, the red-haired director answered. "At that time, Mr. Torres told me that the correctness of this item is relative, and journeying along the correct path doesn't always lead to the best result, and excessive reliance on it is not wise." Let me explain it this way. The red-haired director hesitated a bit as she organized her words, stating, "Suppose you return to when the cleanup bureau was newly established and constantly harassed by outer gods, and you ask the prayer wheel how to protect humanity, it would tell you to construct a Watcher's Palace. With the Watcher's Palace, those true God-level beings are kept out of the present world, thus ensuring human safety. However, as a consequence, the overall strength of the cleanup bureau begins to decline. At its peak, even without the support of the Star Palace, the 12 directors had pillar god-level power, causing outer gods to flee in fear, trembling at the mention of the cleanup bureau's name. But with the protection of the Watcher's Palace, the probability of abnormal appearances drastically reduces, the intensity of battles with outer gods plummets, and the new generation faces too easy a situation, leading to extremely slow strength gains. Once the older generation is gone, if their successors are too weak, incapable of reaching even a pillar god level, let alone true god level, any breach in the Watcher's Palace allowing pillar god level entities to descend would mean only destruction for humanity. Seeing Leon enter contemplation, frowning by the side, the red-haired director couldn't help but sigh. Looking back at the prayer wheel, while its answers do fulfill your wish to protect humanity, it could lead to premature extinction for a species that could have survived naturally because of your protection. Therefore, although the prayer wheel can always provide correct answers and your wish can always be fulfilled, the ultimate outcome may not be what you desire, which is why it remains sealed. Can it truly fulfill wishes yet not lead to a good outcome? After listening to the director's information about the wish compass, Leon, amidst the prompt of "your resistance to the abnormal object has greatly increased," frowned in contemplation. According to the director's description, using the wish compass doesn't seem to come with a cost, but none of the abnormal objects I've encountered are like that. With such a powerful effect, an abnormal object should have an equally impressive price. Therefore, if using the wish compass indeed doesn't require any cost, perhaps the not necessarily beautiful result it yields is the price to be paid. This thing seems a bit eerie. By the way, Director, after memorizing the information about the wish compass, Leon couldn't help but ask, "You seem to know a lot about the wish compass. Have you used it before?" "I sort of used it." Upon hearing this, the red-haired director hesitated, then pressed his lips together and responded somewhat succinctly. "At the time, the Ophiuchus Subbureau rebelled, forcing the Bureau into a tight spot. So the Bureau used the wish compass once, wanting to know if there was a way to quell the Serpentarius rebellion. After that, I was the one who executed that method." "I see." Seeing the red-haired director's mood drop, Leon, who inadvertently stepped on a landmine, quickly shifted the topic. "Well, regarding the incident where the royal palace was attacked by an abnormal object earlier, will the Bureau send down investigators? When will the investigator arrive this time?" "Hard to say." After hearing Leon's words, the red-haired director glanced at him, then responded, "The investigators responsible for the kingdom on behalf of the Bureau have basically all been offended by our people, and none of them want to take on the task of investigating us. Among the two willing to come, Camus was proven to be a fake identity of the Aquarius director, and the remaining female investigator, who was cursed twice by the Black Goat, is familiar with Camus and currently under investigation, so no one will be coming for a while. Wow, this is even possible? Although the purpose was only to change the topic, upon hearing the red-haired director's answer, Leon couldn't help but express his speechlessness. Does this mean that the matter of me rescuing the princess will simply be glossed over? The Bureau won't even investigate. As you said, you were just there to save someone in this incident. The red-haired director smiled and said, if it were like Ryan's Bloody Night, where there were a large number of targeted casualties, and there was suspicion of a cleaner illegally using an abnormal object, the Bureau would definitely send someone to investigate to the end, and those investigators would have no choice but to come. However, the result of the palace being attacked, besides dozens of guards being injured, did not result in any deaths, and the royal family members were not in any danger. So, although the matter is significant, the priority for investigation by the Bureau is actually not that high. When you think of it like that, it does make sense. After listening to the director's analysis, Leon couldn't help but nod in agreement. For the Kingdom of Lutang, the princess ascending through a coup is undoubtedly major, but for the Cleanup Bureau, who sits on the throne, is not that important. What matters is whether the bloodline of the royal family of Tavistock is uninterrupted. Since there are no issues with the bloodline of the palace members, for the Cleanup Bureau, there really isn't much that needs serious investigation. If it didn't involve the royal family, a random report from me might have sufficed. This information is worth noting. It might come in handy for future rebellions. Leon. Just as Leon was gauging the red lines of the Cleanup Bureau, following their response, the red-haired director softly called him, then said, would you like to take a vacation in the coming days? Haven't you taken on the investigation task to the Kralik Kingdom? Seeing Leon's somewhat puzzled expression, the red-haired director smiled and reminded him, even if you can take the Sky Clipper, this overseas task won't be brief. You might not come back for a while. Moreover, Mr. Taurus over there also needs a few days to prepare, and considering the discussions with the Scorpio branch, it might even drag on for a week. So, I thought, why not take advantage of this gap and give you a few days off to spend some time with your family? That's true. After hearing the red-haired director's reminder, Leon realized that he hasn't been home much lately, and since he's going abroad soon, he indeed should spend more time with his family. Thank you, Director. Gratefully glancing at the red-haired director, Leon asked, so, should I start my vacation tomorrow? Today, or rather, right now? Returning to his desk and sitting down, the red-haired director glanced at the newspaper on the table, then frowned slightly. Continuing to read while not lifting her head, she said, oh, by the way, here's another thing. Emma's daughter has regained her body and can leave Treasure Flower Manor. Before going on a mission yesterday, she wanted me to help enroll that child in Bridge Public School so she could accompany your younger siblings and not be at home alone all the time. If you're available these 2 days, could you help handle her school enrollment? Little Ellie can attend school now? Recalling the shy-eyed, always wearing a large sun hat, softly speaking, sweet little girl, Leon couldn't help but smile upon hearing the red-haired director's words. Sure, no problem at all. Indeed, if you handle it, there will surely be no issue. Flipping through the Royal Mail news in her hands and glancing at the headline news, the red-haired director couldn't help but smirk and said with a bittersweet sigh, for an administrative officer like me, there are probably 10 or 8 of us in the police department, and even more in the entire kingdom, not even 100 but at least 80 not noticeable at all. But the Honorable Prince is different. Things that seem difficult for small officials like me, the prince probably only needs to give an order, and someone will eagerly handle them. It's really enviable. But compared to power, scorching hot as it may be, the most enviable thing about the prince is that he has a good wife, harmonious and loving, truly envy-inducing. Oh, come on. What's that about? Suddenly roasted out of nowhere, Leon frowned slightly, puzzled, and asked, what are you trying to say? Oh, nothing really. opening the newspaper's inner pages, turning the headline towards Leon. The red-haired director took a sip of tea and said with a chuckle, "Just reading the news and having some reflections." Reading the news? Blinking in confusion, Leon glanced at the newspaper in her hands, following the movement of the red-haired director. Royal Mail News. Kingdom of Seo's royal marriage rejected. Princess. My heart has been devoured by the lion. New industry news. Rumor of the princess's upcoming marriage causes royal capital's decoration prices to skyrocket. Financial Times. Princess's stable relationship. Ryan Armaments counseled for long-term hold. The Sun News. Exclusive interview Princess. The best partner is a soul friend. Dance Entertainment News. New show at Central Cross Theater. I fell in love with a lion. What the is all this? Though he had already mentally prepared himself, after getting off the bus, Leon couldn't help but feel a toothache as he walked home and saw the promotional posters at the newsstand. Ever since the palace incident, Princess Veronica had been busy stabilizing the situation, working hard to suppress the old nobility and trying to smoothly take power from the old king. So busy that her feet could hardly touch the ground, leaving no time to bother Leon. But even though she wasn't there in person, her people were constantly confessing their love while working, seizing every chance to chat about it, and hiring people to spread news, frantically hyping up the romance. Even though in the past week they hadn't even seen each other once, it was as if they were in a scandalous love affair, making the majority of the royal capital believe they were about to marry. It's just absurd. Letting out an extremely disdainful TSK, Leon turned the corner towards Happy Apartments, where an old burly man who hadn't been seen for a while emerged from the small garden beside the building, holding his exceedingly long garden shears. Good evening. Leon politely greeted the old man and then walked into the apartment lobby under the man's watchful eyes. After 2 months of back and forth, and experiences of being bound with wool and hung out overnight whenever he laid a hand on Leon, the old man's not-so-bright mind finally managed to remember the new rules of Happy Apartments. No bad guys allowed in, but a certain wicked little demon is the only exception, free to come and go as he pleases. Even though he still worried about the residents' safety, occasionally passing behind Leon or hiding outside his window at night with shiny garden shears, he hadn't directly laid a hand on him anymore. Seeing Leon entering the building through the large window of the manager's office, the manager lady stopped knitting her wool, raised her head, and asked in surprise, "Why are you back so early today? You usually don't come home until nighttime." "Haha. Today's circumstances are special. This is a gift for you." Opening the small window of the manager's office, Leon handed over a set of deluxe yarn he bought on the way, smiling as he explained. "Recently, work has been going well, and I'm about to go on a business trip for a while, so the bureau gave me a few days off to relax and spend time with family. By the way, where are Anna and the others? They should be back soon." The manager lady took the yarn in surprise, saying, "It's school dismissal time. Anna should have picked up the 2 kids and is on her way back. Oh dear, this yarn isn't cheap. I can't accept it. It's actually not that expensive. Just a little gift. Please accept it." Returning the yarn offered by the manager lady, Leon expressed sincere gratitude. "My job keeps me busy, often away from home, so Anna has to take care of William and Melanie by herself, and you and Uncle John have helped a lot with that. I remember all these acts of kindness. Compared to the care you and Uncle John have given our family, this is just a small token. It wasn't even specially bought. Just something I saw on the way back that I thought you might like. Oh, and there's something for Uncle John too." While talking, Leon reached into his cufflinks to take out 2 large whetstones and a packet of select flower seeds from his mirrored world, pushing them back with the yarn, insisting earnestly, "Aunt Mary, please accept them. The pay from the cleanup bureau is quite good. These are really nothing to me." "Well, okay then." Seeing Leon's insistence, the manager lady did not continue to refuse. Instead, she accepted the yarn packets, planning to knit 2 pairs of gloves and hats for the Ryan family's 2 children to repay the favor. After accepting the gifts, as if suddenly remembering something, she voiced a bit worriedly, "By the way, City officials came by recently, saying they're preparing to renovate Happy Apartments and expand its area. Did you know about this? Renovating Happy Apartments? Hearing the manager lady's question, Leon couldn't help but be slightly stunned. Indeed, though it's meticulously managed by the manager lady and the old man, the predecessor of Happy Apartments was after all a charitable asylum from over 90 years ago, making it essentially a century-old building now. According to the kingdom's building repair law, any mid to high-rise building facing the street in the royal capital should be inspected every 10 years, repainted, and extensively renovated every 50 years, and it seems that Happy Apartments is due for such a renovation. However, there are always counters to policies, wherever they may be an inviolable truth. Although the kingdom's regulations are meticulously crafted, both inspections and renovations require money and manpower. Given the kingdom's recent financial constraints, even cutting down the pensions for military families, the municipal department is naturally reluctant to undertake such labor-intensive and unprofitable tasks, and only buildings in the affluent and noble areas might receive proper maintenance. After all, if a building collapses and injures someone, it's the contractor's responsibility, and the municipal department at most is guilty of negligent maintenance. Considering the truly limited funds, of eating off the project's leftovers is already the limit. But if such regulations were strictly enforced, conducting street-wide inspections and renovations frequently, not only promotions but maintaining even a modest career might be at risk for the person in charge, as they'd presumably be relegated to scrubbing toilets at the municipal office for the rest of their career. So forget painting and renovating, even the once-every-decade inspections rarely happened, with staff barely glancing around, frivolously filling out repair claims, and pocketing some maintenance funds to finish the task. While the municipal department was inactive, the residents couldn't disregard it, since their safety was their concern. Thus, Happy Apartments renovations over the years had been funded and managed by the manager lady, leaving both her and the old man working for nearly a century without significant savings. However, with their meager salaries, they only managed the most basic maintenance, leaving many parts of Happy Apartments extremely worn out, barely maintaining functionality, with even the banisters in the stairwell missing several segments. If the old man's impressive repair skills, honed over nearly a century, weren't in play, the continued existence of the Happy Apartments might even be in question. This is great news. Recalling the condition of Happy Apartments, Leon expressed his congratulations with pleasant surprise. The apartments really need some repairs. If the municipal department is willing to handle the renovation, you and Uncle John will have much less to worry about. That certainly is the case. The manager lady nodded in agreement but couldn't help voicing some concerns. But John and I are essentially part of this apartment. If the Happy Apartments are renovated and expanded, will we still have a place here? Upon hearing the caretaker lady's concern, Leon finally snapped back to the reality that the situation with Happiness Apartments was not as straightforward as it seemed. The caretaker couple were too human-like, which caused Leon to always treat them as particularly kind neighbors, somewhat neglecting their non-human essence. The birth of Happiness Apartments was not only due to the seed of abnormality provided by the Aquarius director, but also stemmed from the gratitude and remembrance of those within the charitable asylum over 90 years ago, for the old couple who had helped them, and their heartfelt hope for the couple's continued existence. Therefore, as an abnormal object, although the two were administrators and even received salaries from the city council, in reality, they were vassals of the building, not actual human beings, unable to exist independently of the apartment. Moreover, abnormal objects themselves are not indestructible. Like Leon's witch's broom, once broken, it never reacted again. If the city council were merely conducting maintenance, it probably wouldn't affect the old couple's existence. But if there was a large-scale renovation or expansion, the situation would become uncertain. I can't say for sure. Understanding the crux of the matter, Leon's expression became serious, and after contemplating for a moment, he proposed. How about this? I can submit a report to the cleanup bureau in the name of protecting the continuity of the abnormal object, to stop this renovation, and then ask for a large amount of funding, allowing you to decide what to do so you don't have to worry about any issues. However, what Leon hadn't expected was that, after hearing his proposal, the caretaker lady hesitated a bit and ultimately shook her head and refused. Let's just have the apartment renovated normally. Rather than stopping the renovation and expansion, the old man and I would prefer for you to ensure that they don't evict the tenants after expansion and don't raise the rent here. That definitely won't happen. Although Leon didn't like to use the privileges brought by his noble status, given a reasonable request like this, he naturally had no reason to refuse and directly nodded in agreement. But then, he hesitated slightly and reminded, "However, are you sure it's okay? I can't determine if this expansion counts as maintenance or damage to Happiness Apartments itself. If the outcome leans more toward damage, you and Uncle John might indeed disappear." "No problem." Hearing Leon agree to her promise, the caretaker lady smiled reassuredly and explained, "This place indeed needs a good renovation. There's a significant missing section of handrails on the stairs, and every time your two little ones run around the building, I'm on edge, worried they'll fall off the stairs while playing. Moreover, Hannah and a few other families living here are planning to have children in the coming years. We can't let those children continue to live in such unsafe conditions. Can we? Aunt Mary, these two matters are not conflicting," Leon insisted. "Based on my understanding of abnormal objects, if the city council isn't leading it but you are in charge of the renovation, you should be able to ensure the impact is minimized. This way, even if there's a major renovation, it likely won't affect your continued existence." "Let's not." The caretaker lady pondered for a while before shaking her head, gently refusing with a kind expression. "We can only manage some repairs. We don't have the capability to expand the building. But the city council folks said they've already coordinated with the surrounding buildings and even acquired the abandoned factory at the back, planning to expand Happiness Apartments 8 to 9 times. Besides continuing to offer cheap rental housing, they seem to be preparing to reopen the former charitable asylum to take in children who've lost parents in the old city, providing some basic education and teaching vocational skills. They said this is the new decree from the princess because children represent the future of a country. So where conditions allow, the financial budget would prioritize education and childcare, with substantial annual funding allocations." As she spoke, the caretaker lady seemed to have fully accepted the situation, initially smiled apologetically, and then expressed her happiness amid Leon's silence. "I've never been too concerned about these decrees, so I don't quite understand what they say. But I think as long as more homeless children can be taken care of, it's always a good thing, so let's do it however we should. But if there really is expansion, the possibility of you disappearing with Happiness Apartments will be very high." Leon considered and insisted. "Here's what could be done. I can notify them to skip the Happiness Apartments area during expansion, focusing elsewhere, so both can remain intact." "Let's not." Seeing Leon's determination to preserve Happiness Apartments, the caretaker lady thought for a moment before knitting a circle of the yarn in her hands, then smiled kindly and declined. "Happiness Apartments faces the street directly. If we skip this building, the future charitable asylum and the apartment would either need to bypass or open a new alley from the back, which would be quite troublesome. Besides, the old man and I have lived long enough, including life before and after death. I've lived for over 150 years. Even the city council folks who issued us our paychecks have died of old age, so there's no need to keep clinging. But, thank you, dear. I know you don't want us to disappear, but we've really made up our minds." Seeing Leon about to say more, the caretaker lady gently explained. "Originally, we wanted to survive to take care of those evicted children, and once they all left, we'd feel that the good people in the royal capital weren't living easy lives, so we thought to help if we could. But we too weren't anything remarkable in life, nor capable after death, couldn't do much, only helping out wherever we saw difficulty. Now, with rare good news, once the new charitable asylum is built, this remaining building and patch of land can help more people. We are already content with no regrets." "All right then." It was unexpected that the princess's ascension would impact the sustainability of Happiness Apartments. Seeing the caretaker lady's serene face post-discussion, Leon nodded and chose to respect their personal wishes. Yet, respect aside, some things still need to be attempted. Noting the subtle anticipation on the caretaker lady's face for the completion of the new charitable asylum, Leon tentatively suggested, "Here's what I can do. I won't stop them from expanding happiness apartments, but can attempt to minimize changes to the original structure wherever possible, to see if your essence can be preserved. Also, I somewhat understand the secret technique used by the Aquarius director for your creation. Perhaps when the city council begins construction, I might try using the secret technique to bond you two with the new charitable asylum. How would that be? Bond us with the new charitable asylum? Upon hearing Leon's words, the caretaker lady hesitated slightly, but still expressed concern. But won't this affect? It won't. Leon shook his head. Consider it like taking on a part-time job, besides supervising happiness apartments, also being administrators and gardeners for the new charitable asylum. Pausing slightly, Leon then spoke to the caretaker lady, whose face showed signs of doubt. Aunt Mary, surely you wouldn't want to vanish before witnessing the new charitable asylum open, right? Then, let's try to live a few more years. Faced with Leon's Japanese-style question, the administrator lady hesitated for a while but couldn't resist the temptation of personally witnessing the establishment of the new Poverty Relief Institute and finally agreed to Leon's proposal. However, even so, she couldn't help but advise. But don't be too deliberate. My husband and I have lived long enough, and we're very satisfied. There's no need to go to great lengths for us. Yeah, definitely not. After hearing the administrator lady's words, Leon smiled on the surface, but in his heart, he had made up his mind. When the new Poverty Relief Institute starts, he must find a way to preserve this elderly couple as much as possible. If they really feel they've lived enough and want to rest forever, there's no reason for him to stop them. But now it's obvious they still have some concerns. They just don't want their presence to affect the establishment of the new Poverty Relief Institute. So, he definitely needs to do some behind-the-scenes manipulation. While Leon, who was acting two-faced, was contemplating how to be a power broker and quietly preserve happy apartments, 3 familiar footsteps came from outside the door. Soon after, Anna, with a slightly darkened complexion, appeared outside the apartment door, holding William, looking calm, with her left hand, and Melanie, full of despair, with her right. Anna, slow down, okay? Melanie, whose ear was red, clearly twisted hard by someone, begged pitifully with a crying face. It's not even 5 o'clock yet, we don't need to rush home, do we? Also, I saw Grandpa John fixing the fence in the little garden. Why don't you go help him first? Melanie, you should just accept your fate. Before the dark-faced Anna could answer, William, with an equally red ear, spoke calmly. As far as I understand Anna, we can't escape a beating today. If she lets out her anger immediately, we might get a few less hits. But if she holds it in a bit longer, who knows what will happen. Darn, I barely got a 2-day break, and as soon as I got back, it's all chaos. Seeing his siblings in such a tense situation outside the door, Leon's lips twitched slightly, and then he went up with a hint of helplessness to ask, Anna, what trouble did they get into this time? Eh? Hearing Leon's voice, Anna, who was wrestling with their sister, trying not to go home, suddenly looked up in surprise and somewhat delightedly said, How come you're big brother? Before Anna could finish her sentence, Melanie, who was unwilling to step onto the stairs just a moment ago, suddenly shot forward and dashed into the hall, skillfully hiding behind Leon and grabbing his trouser leg. Big brother, you don't look well. Seeing her savior appearing, Melanie's previously despairing face instantly blossomed into a bright smile, as she eagerly said to Leon while winking at him, Are you too tired from work? Shall I give you a shoulder massage? Or maybe tell you a story? We'll see. Seeing his little sister being exceptionally well-behaved, Leon knowingly patted her little head and gave her a helpless smile. In our family, we listen to your sister Anna. We have to hear what she has to say before I know if I'm tired and need a shoulder rub. It's not that exaggerated. Hearing Leon's words, Anna's cheeks slightly flushed, and she teasingly complained while twisting Melanie's little ear half a turn in the latter's despairing gaze, using her signature sister move. Just wait till we get home. Issuing a tactical threat to her little sister, whom she pulled out from behind Leon, Anna first greeted the administrator lady, then turned to Leon with curiosity, saying, "How come you're home so early today?" I've been working overtime a lot lately, so the office gave me a few days off." Without mentioning the business trip to Kralik Kingdom, Leon made up an excuse and then, while picking up his still calm brother and walking toward the stairwell, he curiously asked, "Let's not talk about me. What exactly did they do this time to make you so angry?" "Big brother, that's prejudiced." Upon hearing Leon's inquiry, William straightened his little face and replied seriously, "Though Melanie and I are a bit naughty, we aren't just troublemakers." "So you haven't caused trouble lately?" "We have." "Big brother, don't misunderstand." Seeing Leon's speechless expression, William quickly explained earnestly, "While we did cause trouble, Anna is not angry because of that. She's angry because of our poor academic performance. It's an intellectual issue, not our fault." "You dare say that?" Hearing William's explanation, Anna immediately turned red with anger and gently pinched him, unable to help but complain to Leon, "Brother, you don't know how infuriating they are." In this exam, the last question in arithmetic was like this. Due to the long waiting time for the public carriage, the Department of Transportation plans to increase the number of carriages on Bridge Street, but due to limited funding, only 2 new carriages can be allocated. Given that there were originally 4 carriages on Bridge Street, each operating 18 hours a day, and each carriage can return to the starting point for new passengers after 3 hours, how should they be arranged to best solve the waiting issue? How should they be arranged to solve the waiting problem? After hearing Anna's words, Leon pondered on the math problem for a moment. With limited funding, the Department of Transportation can only allocate 2 new carriages, plus the original 4 means 6 carriages. Each runs a circuit in 3 hours, and the total operating time is 18 hours a day, meaning each carriage can run 6 trips, totaling 36 trips. If calculated this way, 18 hours for 36 trips means 1 trip every half hour. Wait, at this point, Leon suddenly realized that this seemingly simple problem had a very insidious trap. Although it seems every carriage can run 6 trips in 18 hours, in reality, these 6 are not departing simultaneously in the morning but are staggered, so in fact only 1 carriage can complete 6 trips daily. For kids, this is indeed pretty challenging. Frowning slightly, Leon said in confusion, "William and others are transfer students and missed a lot compared to other children. It's perfectly normal they couldn't answer it. Is there a need to be so upset?" "I'm not upset because he couldn't answer it. I'm upset because he did," Anna replied angrily. William's solution was to first deliver a speech on the street, criticizing the transportation department for misusing funds and stirring up discontent among Bridge Street residents to pressure the managers. Then demand an audit of the carriage company's accounts to check for overspending. After finding faults between the transportation department and the carriage company, he suggested going to a counselor to report them, threatening him with affecting the district votes to propose additional funding. Once the proposal was on the agenda, it would involve raising funds for tabloid campaigns questioning if the underfunded transportation department was overly corrupt, or even colluding with counselors, leveraging public opinion to prevent them from voting against it, thus passing the proposal for more carriages. That way, there would never be a shortage of carriages. Goodness, you really know how to solve problems. After listening to his brother's genius-level problem-solving process, Leon's mouth twitched uncontrollably like it had a spasm. If you can't figure out how to arrange the carriages, just jump out of the problem and study how to increase the number of carriages. Then you can arrange them however you like, right? This problem-solving approach, how to say it, is very William. His brother's mind seems never to be confined by any constraints, always ignoring those confusing details and cutting straight to the core of the issue. No matter what the problem or question is, solve it if you can, and if not, solve the person who made it. Whether the process goes off track is not within his consideration range. Just tell him if the problem is solved, and that's all that matters. Well, it's not exactly wrong. Seeing Anna grinding her teeth in anger, Leon had to comfort. Although the solution method is a bit off, the flexible thinking is commendable. We shouldn't rush to stifle their potential, and they are still young after all. Once they grow older, they might not scribble impulsively. They won't scribble impulsively, but they might start acting outright. Facing his apparently lenient brother who couldn't bear to punish the kids, Anna couldn't help but stomp her foot, then said rather angrily, "And what about Melanie? Melanie didn't get it right either?" Upon hearing Anna's words, Leon, who was about to unlock the door, couldn't help but turn around, somewhat surprised. "Isn't Melanie good at math? I remember the teacher praised her as a genius. Didn't she answer this question?" She answered it correctly, and her test paper was full marks. Anna replied helplessly. She didn't even write out the process. She glanced at it and wrote down the answer. She finished the 2-hour test in 5 minutes, then started helping others cheat for a fee, even developing a kind of code, knocking answers with the pen on the desk. In her exam room, apart from William who failed, every other kid got full marks in math. This brat made 9 silver wheels of pocket money by helping others cheat. Moreover, to avoid being caught, she lent all the money out as soon as the exam ended. She signed contracts with 9 kids in the class, agreeing they will repay with snacks and toys over the next year. And she didn't even forget to calculate 4% interest. This is far more severe than William's case. Even his brother can't protect her here, so better take the punishment. After hearing Melanie's equally outrageous actions, Leon, having entered the house, put William down, looked back at Melanie and said helplessly, "Big brother got off work early today, so I'm not very tired. How about skipping the shoulder massage? Please, big brother." Seeing Leon was ready to let it slide, Melanie's face crumpled, and she said tearfully, "My pocket money got deducted too much, so I thought I'd earn some snacks. I know I was wrong. I promise this is the last time I'll help anyone cheat. I swear I won't do it again. If I do, let Anna smash my butt. No need for if. I'll smash your butt this time. Wah!" This holiday is really lively. Watching Anna, with Melanie draped over her knees, Leon couldn't help but shake his head. After Anna gave about a dozen smacks, he spoke. "By the way, Emma's daughter will be attending Bridge Public School soon too." "Little Ellie?" Upon hearing Leon's words, Anna stopped her actions, put away her anger, and exclaimed with surprise, "I thought she was unwell and needed plenty of rest? She can go to school now?" "Yeah. Little Ellie is almost fully recovered." Giving Melanie a quick wink to signal her to run when she could, Leon replied, "You know, she hasn't really interacted with kids of her age before, and she's quite timid. So I thought of placing her in the same class as Melanie and William. With 2 familiar friends around, Ellie should be able to integrate into the class more quickly. Plus, having William and Melanie to look after her, we don't need to worry about her being bullied." "Isn't it only about not being bullied?" Upon hearing Leon's words, Anna couldn't help but glance at him. With these 2 demon lords of mayhem watching over, forget being bullied by peers. If little Ellie wanted to bully the teacher, it probably wouldn't be too hard. For such a well-behaved child, the most dangerous peers are precisely these 2 little devils at home. It feels like hanging out with these 2 brats might lead her astray quite a bit. "Brother." Reaching this point, Anna couldn't help but call out to Leon, then inquired curiously, "Are you telling me this so I can mention it to the school when dropping Melanie and the others off?" "No need. I'll go with you tomorrow." Leon shook his head, then, a little apologetically, said, "I'm telling you this because I hope you can take care of another child. I hope little Ellie can also come and live here." "Huh?" Anna blinked in disbelief. "Brother? You want little Ellie to live with us?" "Yes." Leon nodded. "You know, Emma's job is the same as mine, even busier. She often can't make it home. Little Ellie had no other choice before, so she had to stay by herself at the estate. Now that she can go out, staying alone in that empty mansion would be too lonely." Your expression seems a bit strange. Is there a problem with taking in another child?" "Not really. Little Ellie is a good kid. I certainly don't mind her living with us. It's just..." Anna shook her head slightly, hesitant. then continued, "Brother, have you talked about this with Veronica? Question mark. I mean." Seeing Leon frowning, seemingly not grasping her question, Anna sighed, shooed Melanie and William back into the room, then whispered with a flushed face, "Aren't you about to get married to Veronica? But there's also something between you and Emma. Aren't you worried about conflicts between them?" "Oh? Never mind the conflicts. Who said I'm getting married? Huh? Aren't you?" Anna blinked, puzzled. "That's what the newspapers say. Also, Veronica came by yesterday. She asked me if I'd be her bridesmaid." "What? She came by yesterday?" "Yes, indeed," Anna commented as Leon reacted, surprised. "She said she was here to discuss the wedding with you. Although she didn't find you, she hired a new doctor for me, bought new clothes for Melanie, and even gifted William a whole set of books. Oh, by the way." At that point, Anna seemed to recall something, her expression turning curious. When Veronica came yesterday, William was doing his homework. After seeing his history homework, she first couldn't help but laugh for a while, then pondered over it for a long time, and finally borrowed a few of his old assignments, saying she wanted to look at them at home. Borrowed a few old assignments? Upon hearing Anna's words, Leon frowned in confusion. Veronica is so busy. Why would she be interested in a grade schooler's homework? Even if she... Wait, William's old assignments? Isn't it Pan-Continent Unification Plan? The night was deep, with most of the royal capital already peacefully sinking into the darkness. Although lamps weren't considered a luxury, for most citizens of the royal capital, if not for working under the lights, burning oil and lighting lamps pointlessly was undeniably quite a disgraceful waste. Only the wealthy living in the upper city, on places like Redwood Avenue and Lowther Arcade, would light their lamps all night long for some brightness, regardless of the cost. And among the few light zones in the royal capital, the place with the most lamps was naturally the palace, at the heart of the royal capital. However, after the palace quietly changed masters, most of those perpetually lit lamps were ordered to be turned off by the new master, with only one window still illuminated in the sleeping quarters at the rear of the palace. Phew! Finally, almost done with the busy work. After handling the desk work, the princess, known as the first night owl of the royal capital, stretched lazily like a cat, working out her sore muscles. Yet she didn't turn off the lights to sleep as usual, but instead took out a crumpled notebook from the shelf behind her, and quietly began to flip through it at the desk. The writing in the notebook looked a bit crooked, but rather than saying the handwriting was ugly, it was more like it was drawn with feet sliding on the ice, with even straight lines written somewhat unstably. Thus, the chubby round fonts were filled with the unique innocence and charm of children. However, though the handwriting seemed innocent, the contents of the notebook were far from naive, instead holding a rather sharp sense. The first step of the plan is to overthrow the royal family and completely unify the kingdom. Looking at the royal family emblem marked with a red cross on William's old notebook, Princess Veronica couldn't help but slightly curl her lips. Unlike the scribbles beside it, the royal family emblem, labeled Target on the notebook, was drawn rather meticulously. One could tell it was traced over the pattern by placing the homework paper on top and drawing precisely along the exposed lines. Below the crossed-out royal family emblem was a brief map of the kingdom's surrounding geography, similarly traced over a map. Then, at all costs, make allies with the nobles here, find a way to secure this place. On the brief map, the location likely representing the Ruhr district of the Kingdom of Heisen was heavily circled, with a black doodle next to it, unclear what it was. Blind guess it might be a coal block. Recalling the intelligence on the Ruhr district, the princess pulled a discarded document from the desk, flipping over to write Ruhr district, coal, on the back. Remembering the Ruhr district is the largest coal-producing area in Heisen Kingdom, this is likely a mineral marker, but the word coal seems to be taught in third-grade public school. The child probably didn't know how to write this word, so drew a black coal block as a representation. After securing the black, burning warmly, slightly hard-to-bite thing, choose the coldest winter and completely sever the paths northward from the Kingdom of Heisen and Ryan County. On the traced brief map, 6 of the 7 main roads leading north were crossed out. Only the road in Ryan County remained intact, and beside this remaining main road, 2 crossed, handled toothpicks, long daggers, or 2 long swords. It should represent conflict, right? Instinctively drawing a question mark on the discarded document paper, the princess painstakingly tried to decipher the skewed annotations in the notebook. The Northern Kingdom is very cold in winter, needs to burn things to keep warm. Ports by the sea make ice cream for several months, so if the roads are severed, they can only burn the stored things. Make ice cream for several months probably means freezing for months. Seems like he hasn't learned the spelling for this term. Translating William's homework, copying it onto the back of the discarded document, the princess referred to her understanding of the Kingdom of Ashido, adding a few potentially effective solutions targeting the Northern Kingdom, then stared at the old homework, lost in thought. What this child wrote, though seemingly filled with child's play, had an amazingly broad perspective. As the Ice Plains nation located at the world's farthest north, the Northern Kingdom Ashido almost every few years would venture south, harassing its neighboring countries, but never daring to touch the Black Forest Duchy, solely because the Black Forest Duchy held their lifeline. And for herself and the kingdom, rather than spending tremendous effort constructing defensive works, stationing troops along the border for years, passively awaiting the Kingdom of Ashido's invasion, it would be better to reverse the strategy, seize the initiative, and force the Kingdom of Ashido to move southward early, by choosing an advantageous time. Although war is the worst option, merely resisting war blindly will inevitably lead to greater tragedies. Rather than continuing to heavily invest in the military, letting defense works and military expenses cripple the kingdom's finances, it would be more feasible to initiate a timely battle, allowing the Northern Kingdom to understand that its somewhat weak neighbor also has the capability to perish together. Lifting the pen to list the military comparison between the two countries on the back of the discarded document paper, Princess Veronica's face revealed a resolute expression. A fight is feasible. Even though the military strength between the two countries still holds a significant gap, unlike the previous defensive battles, with the advantage of controlling the initiative, this is almost an open ambush with little possibility of losing, and the intensity of the war is easy to control. With the main routes severed in advance, only 2 to 3 corps are needed to block the Kingdom of Ashido's southward path. In addition to the opponent's hasty deployment and logistical challenges in winter. Then, without even requiring a major battle, just a month of standoff and a few small-scale confrontations will be enough to make the Kingdom of Ashido retreat, opting for negotiations actively. At that time, one side can promise to resume coal transportation but demand the Kingdom of Ashido to return the pass seized 6 years ago, and once that pass is exchanged back, only 1/6 or even fewer permanent troops will be enough to completely block these bandits' southward path. Once the border pressure is lifted, large-scale disbandment of those inherently weak old troops can occur, prioritizing the financial budget over education and public spending, then training a large batch of individuals with some education within 8 to 15 years. Once this generation grows up and becomes the seeds to spark more individuals, one will have the capability to wield power decisively, thoroughly removing the kingdom's rotten layers, rejuvenating this already ancient nation. Your Highness! Just as Princess Veronica sat at the table with her eyes eagerly scrolling through a child's notebook, a cautious voice reminded her from outside the royal bedchambers. You have 6 more hours until the budget meeting at the Ministry of Finance. Accounting for the time needed to dress, meet with the members and transit, you should rest now. All right, I'll sleep now. Upon hearing the attendant's reminder, the princess looked up at the window and realized with a start that dawn was already breaking. She had been so engrossed in reading that she had completely lost track of time. After carefully closing the old notebook and storing it away in the drawer, the princess yawned tiredly, got up from the desk and walked towards the large bed in her bedroom. However, just as she was about to sleep, she suddenly remembered something and turned to ask the attendant. By the way, is tomorrow afternoon's interview all set? It's all arranged. The attendant, who was drawing the curtains, was slightly taken aback by the question, and then responded with an odd expression. I have talked to the lead writer of Scepter and Horn, requesting them to ask more about your relationship with Prince Leon during the interview. As for the questions they compiled, I have copied them for you and placed them on your desk in the third pending file, which you can see after the budget meeting tomorrow. Great. Thank you for your hard work. Satisfied, the princess nodded before lazily flopping onto her large bed, hugging a pillow, and then sleepily instructed. But remember to adjust the order in the future. Anything related to Leon should be in the number 1 file, as I want to see it first. Number 1? Isn't that the state affairs file? Although I understand it's your first love, isn't this a bit excessive? Upon hearing the princess's instruction, the attendant felt her cheeks twitch slightly and muttered inwardly. Nevertheless, she nodded respectfully. Understood. I will remember. MHM. By the way, Your Highness. Just as Princess Veronica closed her eyes, seemingly ready to drift into sleep, the attendant couldn't help but quietly ask. With so many affairs to handle these days, you only sleep 4 to 5 hours before getting up. You're so busy. Do you really not need to cancel the interview, adjust the schedule, and get some proper rest? Worried the princess might misunderstand her intentions, the attendant quickly continued to explain. Your Highness, it's not that I think you shouldn't spend time on Prince Leon. I just feel that rather than taking these interviews with little meaning, you'd be better off resting more and then meeting him directly. That won't do. Upon hearing the attendant's suggestion, the princess shook her head with her eyes closed, saying, You don't understand Leon. Normally, he's very cautious and avoids situations he can't control. So if I repeatedly intrude into his life too forcefully, not only would he not accept it, but he'd distance himself from me. Conversely, if I don't actively seek him out most of the time and just use small tricks to maintain my presence, occasionally unable to help myself showing up, he would find it harder to push me away. The problem is, who would push you away? Our dear prince does seem a bit blind. Glancing at the princess lying on the bed, with her sleep dress revealing her shapely figure, the attendant barely resisted the urge to reach out and gave a slight nod. Also, do you think I'm coming on too strong? Kneeling on the bed, pressing her head onto the pillow, the princess let out a pleased sigh and said softly with her eyes closed. I actually know that you probably think I've been arranging all the newspapers to focus heavily on Leon recently is quite absurd, and maybe even laugh at me for being so infatuated after finding a prince, am I right? Upon hearing the princess's words, the attendant was slightly startled and hurriedly shook her head to deny. No, Your Highness, I never thought that. It's okay because you're not wrong. When I'm free, my mind is indeed full of Leon. After wiggling in the bedding, the princess smiled and playfully asked the attendant, whose expression was somewhat broken. Tell me, if there's a man who doesn't care about your family background, doesn't covet your wealth, nor your beauty, who is kind to siblings, hardworking, responsible, and almost impeccable in personal character. Besides that, he understands your thoughts, agrees with your ideals, and even risks everything to stand by you, daring to storm the palace with his team to save you from danger. Wouldn't you be moved? Well, that would be moving. Seeing the dreamy look on the attendant's face, reminiscent of showcasing her most cherished jewelry, Princess Veronica smiled contentedly and punched her fist into the air resolutely. You must know that life seems full of opportunities, but some chances come at you, and if you don't seize them tightly, they're gone forever. Leon, to me, is someone I must grasp firmly no matter what. I must fight, I must strive, and do everything to hold on. Being mocked by others in their hearts means nothing compared to him. Looking at the princess lying on the bed with her behind half-twisted yet maintaining an assertive fist-clenching posture, the attendant couldn't help but cast a complex gaze at her. Although your determination is admirable, is such a relentless pursuit necessary just for a romance? Haha, just kidding. Watching the attendant, who was momentarily stunned by her romantic teachings, Princess Veronica chuckled and nestled under the covers, neatly lying down with closed eyes. When I'm free, it's not entirely about thinking of him, perhaps only 70%. The other 30%, I do consider other matters like arranging those somewhat absurd reports. Those reports? Seeing the attendant's puzzled expression, The princess, with a sleepy look, murmured softly. When Joshua and the queen were first placed under house arrest, the Minister of Finance and the nobility of the upper chamber really made a fuss with me, even publicly declaring it an illegal coup, which although suppressed, caused quite a stir. But after I took on these interviews and temporarily unified the reportage of several major newspapers, heavily discussing Leon every day, have you seen anyone still talking about a coup? Everything was intentional. Speculation on coups and conspiracy theories can't be suppressed when stirred, but a juicy tabloid story can effortlessly overshadow such unsettling rumors. Watching the astonished expression of the attendant, Princess Veronica smiled and sweetly continued with her eyes closed. With such big hype in those reports, Leon must have seen it but hasn't come to ask me about it, so he should have figured out why and understands the significance. He gets me. Your Highness, that last statement might not be entirely credible. Watching the princess, who had unknowingly drifted into a peaceful sleep with a smile, the attendant shook her head speechlessly, and holding her heart full of mixed emotions, she quietly left the bedroom and returned to her resting chamber opposite. A dreamless night, perhaps having eaten too much midnight snack, the attendant had an extraordinarily sound sleep. But just as she was getting up with a sore back under the nagging noise of the alarm, intending to wake the princess, a court servant rushed in. There's trouble. Seeing the attendant, the court servant slightly relaxed, then handed a note over with urgency. The ambassador from the Kralik Kingdom said that they lost something extremely important during the previous airship attack, and will consider imposing sanctions on the kingdom if it's not retrieved in 3 days. So, you came running to me? Standing in the hallway of the Happiness Apartments, having just listened to the threats from the Kralik ambassador as relayed by the female police officer, Leon couldn't help touching his cufflinks, then evasively said, "But I'm on vacation right now. If you want me to help find something, you should report it to the cleanup bureau and wait for 3 business days." Bah! Stop evading. Seeing Leon trying to muddle through, the infuriated female officer stomped her foot and then whispered angrily, "I've already figured it out. The ones who attacked the boarding tower were you. Others might not know, but I'm quite clear. Those who assaulted the boarding tower carried real documents and uniforms that were all taken from the reserve vault of the Secret Investigation Bureau, and right before that, you happened to ask me for a clearance slip." Indeed, the truth is out. Seeing the female officer, who was working overtime frantically since the boarding tower incident, with eyes darkened like a national treasure, Leon felt a small pang of guilt in his heart, then coughed lightly and awkwardly explained, "Well, sorry about that, but there was a reason for keeping this from you." "I don't care about your reasons. You have what the Kralik Kingdom wants, don't you?" Pulling Leon by the collar, the female officer said agitatedly in a low voice, "I know you wouldn't mess around. You must have a reason for doing this. So the police department, while having traced the reserve vault, hasn't exposed this matter. I've been covering for you all along. But what do you say now? Even though I don't understand international relations, I do know how important the Kralik Kingdom's technology is. Now that the police department can't find the culprits of the boarding tower attack, they're getting anxious for sanctions. What should the kingdom do?" "Don't worry. Let me think." Patting the back of the female officer's hand to show comfort, Leon furrowed his eyebrows and analyzed the current situation. The Kralik Kingdom suddenly posed a threat, likely after handling the Skyclipper wreckage, realizing that Adify 128 had been taken away, and since they couldn't find its whereabouts, they had no choice but to apply official pressure on the kingdom. For the kingdom in a weak position, the best solution now is to hand over Adify 128. But the issue is that this thing absolutely cannot be returned. Its brain likely contains the kingdom's energy exploration records. If it is handed back, exposing myself is a minor concern. What's crucial is that the revelation of the kingdom's volcanic energy situation would leave the Kralik Kingdom likely to opt for waging war, which would be a most fatal blow to the kingdom that has just begun to have some vitality. So, indeed, I have the item, but I absolutely cannot return it to them. Upon hearing the first half of the sentence where Leon admitted possession, the female officer let out a sigh of relief, but before finishing it, Leon's latter words caught it back in her throat. The explanation for the reason is a bit complicated. In simple terms, not returning the item would mean sanctions for the kingdom, but returning it would lead to war between the two countries. After roughly explaining the reason for not returning the item, Leon attempted to comfort the somewhat baffled female officer. Additionally, concerning the sanctions, there's really no need to worry too much. The situation in Kralik Kingdom is a bit special. The Cleanup Bureau is preparing to investigate, and once the investigation is completed, action will be taken. The Bureau probably won't act directly. After providing an unexpected answer and seeing Leon's somewhat bewildered expression, the red-haired director helplessly reminded. Although the Kralik Kingdom's issue is significant, Mr. Taurus soon needs to ascend to the palace. At the very least, for the coming month, everything must yield to this. The Bureau's intention is to focus on investigation first, then make a decision once the situation is confirmed. That's not urgent either. Leon pondered for a moment and said, anyway, in a little over a month, Mr. Taurus can successfully ascend. 1 or 2 months of sanctions won't be much for the kingdom. Not just 1 or 2 months, it might be half a year or even longer. Oh? Because the problem with the royal family affects not only the Kralik Kingdom but isn't good to act rashly. They might wait until the situation is thoroughly cleared up before addressing it all at once. The red-haired director explained. Leon, during your vacation days, the Sagittarius director had each branch carry out a self-inspection, discovering that besides Kralik Kingdom, there are others. Hold on. Upon hearing the red-haired director's words, Leon couldn't help but interrupt. Having each branch perform self-inspections? Didn't the Tyndall say there's another traitor in our bureau? What if news leaks during the self-inspection? Don't worry, this kind of low-level mistake the bureau won't commit, well, generally won't commit. After somewhat unconfidently adding this, the red-haired director said, back when you exposed Aquarius director and found out he was also the director of the Gemini branch, all 11 directors of the Zodiac branch office, myself included, underwent certain checks and employed 2 numbered abnormal objects for temporary word spirit constraint. Due to the high consumption of using those 2 items, word spirit constraint slots were limited. The small branches not part of Zodiac might still be uncertain, but we major branch directors can at least ensure loyalty. For if even that couldn't be guaranteed, the Cleanup Bureau wouldn't have endured until now. What an insight from the Bureau. But may I ask, which Bureau did the Gemini branch's director betray? The Cleanup Bureau? Handling Bureau? Certainly not us, right? Ahem. Anyway, after the Zodiac branch office responsible for guarding the 12 kingdoms did an internal self-inspection, they found not just Kralik Kingdom has issues, but there's a total of 4 royal families with problems. Ha! In Leon's utterly shocked expression, the red-haired director said equally helplessly, the kingship of Thousand Sails Maritime Country CO has been completely turned into a ghost ship. Once exposed to full moonlight, everyone aboard instantly turns into ghosts. If it weren't for the kingship anchored in moon-barren sea under year-round fog, it might have been doomed long ago. There's a problem with which kingdom Mythphala too. The royal lineage there is passed down single-handedly. The current grand, which is already over 130 years old and likely to die soon. But her only daughter has disappeared, leaving behind just a fake, making it impossible to confirm if she's alive or not. Trouble also arose for twin kingdoms Carlawyn. Historically, the Eastern and Western Carlawyn kingdoms had completely different faiths, worshipping light and darkness separately. With Eastern Carlawyn kingdom's downfall due to the Ophiuchus Subbureau incident, the luminous church worshipping light should have ceased. But lately, the church unexpectedly emerged, mingling with West Carlawyn Kingdom's native abysmal church, attempting a revision of the national church to restore the former Eastern Carlawyn Kingdom within West Carlawyn Kingdom, with a significant possibility of targeting the royal family. So, counting the city of Machinery Kralik that erupted with an intelligence crisis, out of the entire 12 kingdoms in the world, already a third has been infiltrated? What are the 12 Zodiac branch office even doing? Totally unprecedented. Even when the Cleanup Bureau claims never to make low-level errors. Indeed, low-level errors are seldom committed, but aren't they committing ones that are critically dire? In short, the current situation is rather special. Although those kingdoms seem to be in trouble, the royal families haven't truly been severed. To avoid pushing them to desperate measures, the Bureau can't afford to make too much noise. Upon saying this, the red-haired director couldn't help but glance thankfully at Leon. Compared to those already fallen branches, his own virgin branch is hardly any better. Whether it was the fleshly manifestation of the doe nearly descending 6 years ago, or the iron doll that lurked beside the princess for 6 years, success was only a step away. If it weren't for his luck being good enough that the doe's plan was accidentally foiled, coupled with recruiting someone as capable as Leon, whose rebellion happened to sabotage the opposing plot, perhaps the virgin branch would be the most disgraceful one. Does avoiding too much noise mean that the headquarters is preparing to take its time again? Leon, having no mind to ponder which branch is more humiliating, felt frustrated knowing the kingdom might be sanctioned for at least half a year or more. Last time when the Aquarius plot was revealed, the Bureau said Watcher's Palace was more urgent and didn't directly move to arrest the Aquarius director, sealing off headquarters itself instead. Now upon discovering that someone plans to harm royal families, we don't act immediately but continue to slowly investigate? Do we have to be so indecisive? Mr. Taurus, they just have no choice. The red-haired director sighed in response. You know the responsibility of the cleanup bureau is heavy, and if a decision goes wrong, it's never a small matter. Hence, over the years, caution has become the norm. Just forget about it. Leon shook his head in disagreement. If the bureau were truly cautious, they should have immediately moved upon sensing anything, stopped potential threats at the outset, rather than dithering here, hesitating and afraid to make moves. This isn't caution. It's pure hesitation. Indeed, hearing Leon's words, the red-haired director sighed inwardly, thinking that although careful planning is beneficial, overthinking, demanding perfection before any action, may result in missing opportunities. Since the director went to old soil while the bureau could maintain normalcy usually, but when big issues arose, if the directors had divided opinions, there was no one to make the final decision, leading to poor responses to many situations. It's not that the directors are incapable, but compared to the director and the Aries director, other directors lack a bit of force with leadership qualities. No one has overwhelming superiority in identity or strength, causing every decision to be unusually conservative. Currently, the cleanup bureau feels like a muscular strongman torn between decisions, clearly able to easily defeat opponents by full force yet constantly hesitates considering pros and cons, waiting for perfection before acting. It's frustrating to the point of wanting to scream. Director. Feeling disheartened about this dysfunctional cleanup bureau, Leon suddenly inquired, since the bureau decides to take its time again, should the investigation with Nicole in the Kralik Kingdom also switch to covert operations? The red-haired director nodded in response. Although personnel remains largely unchanged, it's still a Scorpio branch-led investigation with our Virgin branch aiding. But the approach has indeed shifted to be more covert. Conveniently, in Orleson, the kingdom where the Scorpio branch is stationed. Orleson, known as the Green Shade Country, is the largest grain exporter. Thousand Sails Maritime Country CO, City of Machinery Kralik, Refraction Kingdom Riviere, Ice Plains Nation Ashito. For out of the 12 kingdoms purchase grain from Orleson Kingdom every year. Lately, the Orleson Kingdom is preparing to send a mission to exchange for the newly developed irrigation technology from the Kralik Kingdom. The Scorpio branch members might mix into the mission, heading over these days. Oh yes. Recalling something, the red-haired director chuckled slightly. Last time with the King of Nightmares, apparently Edward was deeply impressed by you. Upon hearing it's you in this joint task, his expression was particularly complex. How to say? It's like a tiger starved for 10 days finally seeing a passing creature, but it happens to be a spiny hedgehog, wanting to eat yet fearing to be pricked. Quite amusing. Furthermore, after some contemplation, he finally asked Mr. Taurus for a request, welcoming you but hoping you'll follow instructions. Also, when encountering situations, you should avoid recklessness, notify him before taking any actions, refrain from making impulsive decisions, and choose milder approaches. Come on, what kind of absurd request is this? During the incident with the King of Nightmares, I was cornered so I couldn't hold back. I'm usually very rational. Is it necessary to repeatedly emphasize this? As if I'm some impulsive brute. With a speechless pout, Leon pondered a while and then thoughtfully proposed. Director, how about we tweak the plan and learn from the Scorpio branch's approach? Upon hearing Leon's suggestion, the red-haired director blinked and understood. Have your paramour send a mission too? What paramour? With a slight lip twitch, Leon replied speechlessly. With the Kralik Kingdom urging, why not send a mission there? Explaining the boarding tower situation, then Nicole and I mix into the mission, drawing less attention. Yes, not bad at all. The red-haired director nodded approvingly, smiling. Compared to disguising as travelers or merchants to sneak in, indeed this approach is better. Although more eyes might be watching you, it also offers more ways to confuse the Kralik Kingdom, making operations more convenient. Moreover, having a mission identity also has a benefit. As a prince leading a visiting mission, the Kralik Kingdom must dispatch royal family members to receive you as per diplomatic etiquette. If so, you have the best excuse to contact the Kralik Kingdom's royal family, investigate the situation, and even lend a hand for rescue. Truly the best of both worlds. No, truly a win-win-win scenario. That's what I was thinking. Leon agreed and added, sending missions simultaneously with the Orlison Kingdom also allows official contacts with the Scorpio branch members, minimizing suspicion from the Kralik Kingdom, facilitating our joint action. Indeed, however, if we proceed, the timeline needs moving forward, not only cutting your vacation short, but Mr. Taurus won't make it either, leaving you time to acquire new main combat abnormal objects. Frowning slightly in thought, the red-haired director asked, by the way, I recall the dagger the Aquarius used to kill the canine deity. It should also be a strong abnormal object? But its ability doesn't quite suit me. Leon thought for a moment before answering. Its name is Silver Dagger of Cutting, capable of slicing anything as easily as cutting paper. Even intangible things can be severed. However, effectiveness requires manually cutting, and my physical condition and reflexes are only at the lowest of second-level cleaner standards. Enough to bully ordinary people, but if facing those controlled cleaners from Gemini branch, wielding it is probably futile. So the issue is insufficient reflex speed, making it hard to effectively attack stronger cleaners? After listening to Leon's answer, the red-haired director pondered again, then reached for her ear, removing an earring half of a heart. Here, I'm giving you this. Seeing Leon's puzzled look, the red-haired director handed over the heart-stealing stud, smiling as she explained. Leon, your greatest strength has always been taking hits, even without using the substitution from the sheep heart, combining War Cornerstone and post-drunken state. You have two types of undying body. Lacking only in reflex speed means missing targets. My thought is, since your issue is reaction, unable to hit with the blade, why bother reacting? Rather than improving reflex speed, directly take a hit relying on your two types of undying body. Then utilize this heart-stealing stud during impact to steal the opponent's thoughts. And when they land a blow, slightly relax vigilance. Preparing to continue attacking, you can directly prepare in advance, poised with your blade ready for them to charge onto it themselves. If you can't react, then don't react and wait for the other side to crash into you. After hearing the red-haired director's words, Leon pondered for a moment, then reached out and touched the heart-stealing stud and cutting silver dagger. Name: heart-stealing stud, left, connected heart. Appearance: a ruby earring that can only be worn on the left ear, shaped like a half-cracked heart, which emits a pearl-like glow when the wearer is attacked. Ability: penetrates the heart. Cost: the more heart thoughts eavesdropped, the harder it is to speak one's own heart while wearing this earring. File: among the Merfolk clan, there is a legend of a heart-connected gem, which is said to allow one to understand the thoughts of all wise beings just by holding it in their hand. In a joint operation, the Merfolk priest who led the tribe to invade the harbor was killed, and the heart-connected gem he held was shattered by the Pisces Subbureau. with fragments obtained by Lion Subbureau Director Beverly. The heart-connected gem fragments were forged into a left and a right stud using Taurus' secret technique. Since no one in the Lion Subbureau claimed it, it was handed over to headquarters, eventually being acquired by Virgin Branch Director Olivia. Evaluation. A very practical abnormal object, very suitable for someone with an undying body to use, although the design is somewhat feminine. Contamination value, 3.3. Name. Cutting silver dagger. Cutting, removing. Appearance. A silver cutting knife with a pure and bright blade, feeling light and soft, with a black elderwood handle that is hard and smooth to the touch, with no thorns, with ancient, now lost writing engraved along one side of the blade, meaning pure blade of cutting life and death. Ability. Life to the cutter, death to the remover. Cost. When using this blade, one must maintain inner purity and focus, carefree of good and evil but honest in heart. File. One of the 6 special abnormal objects possessed by the deceased overlord of the dead realm, six-faced elephant deer, responsible for cutting the list of the deceased generated by the Death Soul Register, thus imbued with part of the power to cut life and death. After the six-faced elephant deer chose to leap from the end due to hatred for its endless work, the cutting silver dagger and other 5 abnormal objects were scattered in the realm of the dead, obtained by the then Gemini Branch Director. Evaluation. A remarkably effective abnormal object, when activating the cut effect, can cleanly and neatly cut open everything the blade touches into 2. When activating the remove effect, it can forcibly remove a part of something from its main body, immediately granting it inevitable death. Contamination value, 0.1, cut, 60, remove. This combination really does seem to work. After reading the descriptions of the heart-stealing stud and cutting silver dagger, Leon's eyebrows raised slightly. For someone like me with an undying body, as long as it's not a particularly targeted attack, I won't die no matter how many hits I take, but my opponent might not be so lucky if they get slashed once with the cutting silver dagger. Even if the heart-stealing stud doesn't necessarily trigger 100% of the time, and even if it does, it won't necessarily hear the right heart thoughts, but after taking 3 or 5 dozen hits it'll surely succeed once, and as long as this setup succeeds once, it's enough for the opponent to take a serious hit. The only slight drawback is that the combination of heart-stealing stud plus cutting silver dagger is only suitable for dealing with close combat opponents and lacks means for long-range enemies. But with my soul vision from the Black Goat, coupled with the silver level shooting expert badge, the effect is not inferior to ordinary long-range abnormal objects, and while it may be a bit lacking in decisively defeating the enemy, it is more than enough as a complementary means. Judging by your expression, you should be thinking that my proposal is not bad. Seeing the satisfaction in Leon's eyes, the red-haired director couldn't help but smile and then seriously advise. However, even with the new main battle abnormal objects, it's best to remain cautious, not to mention the controlled cleaners in the Gemini Subbureau. Just the hot weapons in the Kralik Kingdom itself are dangerous enough. In this joint investigation mission with the Scorpio branch, my highest requirement for you is to ensure your own safety. If you encounter an unsolvable problem, don't act recklessly, don't worry about losing face. Quickly seek help from Edward. Although my relationship with Edward is quite poor, he is, albeit barely, trustworthy, and at least won't leave you to die. If he gets caught up too, then stay with Nicole. Her methods of staying safe aren't bad either. In short, the success of the mission is not important. Your safety is the most critical. Understood. I got it. Hearing the red-haired director's sincere advice, Leon couldn't help but feel a slight warmth in his heart. Although the director has a somewhat tricky personality and is extremely unreliable when drunk, most of the time, he is dependable with not a bad character and takes great care of me, making him a good leader. Additionally, just as Leon was moved by the red-haired director's warm advice, she coughed slightly, then unconsciously averted her gaze, her eyes slightly shifty as she said, "If you end up causing quite a stir this time, like accidentally blowing up the city of machinery, or almost wiping out the Kralik royal family, remember to say Edward commanded it, okay? Remember, Your primary task is not to investigate the situation in the Kralik Kingdom, but to keep a close watch on Leon for me, and don't let him act recklessly." Seeing the two cleaners in front of her first exchange puzzled looks, then look at her in confusion, the Scorpio director couldn't help but rub her brow, continuing with a headache. "In short, you don't need to worry about anything else. Just keep an eye on him for this joint investigation mission and ensure nothing major goes wrong. And then you'll both have done the greatest service. Understand?" "Understood." "Got it, Director." Facing the Scorpio director's stern instructions, although full of doubts inside, the two cleaners, one elderly and one middle-aged, nodded in succession, promising they would keep Leon watched tight. However, although they agreed on the surface, faced with the Scorpio director's wariness as if facing a great enemy, the two Scorpio branch cleaners couldn't help but have some internal grumbling, even thinking their director might be making a fuss over nothing. After all, while powerful abnormal objects can be obtained quickly, the degree to which cleaners get contaminated by them still takes time to gradually build up. That Leon, since joining the cleanup bureau, has only been in for 3 months, and could at most have accumulated 5 or 6 points of Leon value. Meanwhile, the two of us are both veteran second-level cleaners, having joined the cleanup bureau for over 5 years, and our Leon value is nearing the 30-point mark, so simply in terms of on-paper strength, we are estimated to be 5 or 6 times stronger than him. You have to understand that this Leon value accumulated from long-term contamination by abnormal objects allows a cleaner's body to gradually transform into non-human, and at level 1 cleaner level, can even rely purely on physical reaction to dodge bullets shot from even farther away. With such a huge gap between 30 points and 5 points, if the two of us get close, Leon probably wouldn't even have a chance to use any abnormal objects. What could happen with the two of us watching one of him? You two shouldn't take this lightly. He's different from regular cleaners. Just by looking at the expressions of the two cleaners, the Scorpio bureau chief understood that his two subordinates probably hadn't taken his advice to heart. He couldn't help but want to talk about the outrageous record of a certain person to warn them to be careful, very careful. But after pondering for a moment, the Scorpio bureau chief ultimately kept his mouth shut. Simply put, there wasn't much he could say. According to the Cleanup Bureau's confidentiality regulations, information on abnormal objects, related target intelligence, and mission records are classified into 5 levels of confidentiality from top to bottom. Among them, Level 3, Level 2, and Level 1 cleaners are qualified to access information of Level 1, Level 2, and Level 3 respectively. The branch chiefs of the Zodiac branch office and the non-Zodiac branch can access Level 4 confidential information, while the 12 directors and the chief can access Level 5 information. Both cleaners selected to watch Leon to prevent him from causing trouble were only second-level cleaners, so they only had access to Level 2 information. But if you look at Leon's mission records over the past few months, aside from a few fragmented Level 1 records, the lowest level of confidentiality involves killing Descended Scales Gold Sect Holy Spirits, and archives involving this level have a Level 3 confidentiality rating. As for the rest, exposing the Aquarius Director, subduing the Goddess of Wealth, battling in the demonic soul abyss and the King of Nightmares, devouring the canine deity alive, uncovering the mysterious organization targeting the royal families. Any mission archive involving a true god starts at Level 4 confidentiality, and these don't even count towards the action tally. So in the eyes of someone like me who can see all the archives, Leon is a lunatic who, within 3 months of joining the Cleanup Bureau, started madly taking high-risk missions, handling them in extremely radical ways and always causing a huge stir. Whereas for those with insufficient confidentiality levels, Leon appears as a rookie with empty records, having only taken a few routine missions in 3 whole months, with the only special thing being 2 untraceable Level 3 records. For a newcomer who seems to have stumbled onto 2 high-difficulty mission records, these seasoned second-level cleaners with nearly 100 mission records between them would definitely think it's absurd. Let me put it to you this way. Considering these two might not be able to stop Leon from creating chaos, and any negligence could lead to a major blunder, the Scorpio Bureau chief hesitated for a while before choosing to breach the headquarters' confidentiality regulations and give them a roundabout reminder. That Leon, his total mission count is not the 5 as recorded in his archives, but a full 11 times. He's definitely not simple. 11 total missions? Hearing the words of the Scorpio Bureau chief, The two cleaners were slightly stunned, then exchanged puzzled glances. What about 11 missions? Together, our total mission count exceeds 180 times, and we've even participated in level 3 missions 5 or 6 times. Just 11 missions. Wait a minute. If he has 11 missions but only 5 are recorded, doesn't that mean? The situation is exactly as you imagine. Seeing the two cleaners suddenly enlarge their eyes in shock and look at him, the Scorpio Bureau Chief said helplessly. It's not something I can detail out to you, but the time when I suddenly left recently, it was actually to assist in the jurisdiction of the Virgin Branch. During the joint operation at that time, he was the one who received me, and we even, well, fought side by side, I guess. Fighting side by side with our bureau chief, and despite having performed 11 missions, only 5 are recorded. Doesn't that mean that Leon, after joining the cleanup bureau for 3 months, has already participated in 6 true God-level missions? And survived them all? Damn it, are newcomers this monstrous nowadays? In any case, you absolutely have to keep an eye on him. Recalling the devastation in the dream realm and Leon's crazy feat of devouring the canine deity alive, the Scorpio Bureau Chief, still shaken, reminded them once again. Leon indeed has outstanding capabilities, but his nature is also truly crazy and extreme. If pushed, he'll do anything, so make sure to keep a close watch on him. If you notice any signs of him going berserk, you must find a way to contact me immediately. What is such an absurdity? After hearing the Scorpio Bureau Chief's repeated admonitions, a chill ran down the spine of the 2 second-level cleaners. As everyone knows, the level of madness in a cleaner is generally proportional to their individual strength. The faster the power increases, the more likely it is for them to lose control and go insane. And this newcomer, after only 3 months of joining as a cleaner, has already participated in 6 true God-level missions. With Leon value soaring, his degree of madness must be astonishingly high. I'm afraid there's not much humanity left. Plus, his files explicitly state that he has a high affinity with demonic abnormalities. It seems that he's not just no good person, it's not even clear if he can be considered a person. Chief, the middle-aged cleaner swallowed and said with some unease, that Leon, what's his personality like? Is he easy to get along with? If we try to stop him, he won't assault us. Will he? Look at you being such a coward. Before the Scorpio Bureau Chief could respond, the elderly cleaner with a fishing rod took a deep breath, suppressing his inner unease, and jokingly said to lighten the mood. No matter how extreme he is, he's a cleaner, and if worst comes to worst, he would just hit us. Could he really eat us alive? Right, Chief? Hearing the elderly cleaner's joke, combined with Leon's reputation as the food god maniac, the Scorpio Bureau Chief couldn't help but ponder this line of thought further. As for people, Leon shouldn't eat them, but considering his audacity to gnaw on a true god alive, if truly pushed, who knows what he might actually do. Oh? Chief? Wait, Chief, say something? The prolonged silence is making me nervous. Why am I suddenly feeling a cold sweat? Seeing the Scorpio Bureau Chief remain silent in response to his inquiry, the elderly cleaner's smile stiffened. I was just joking when I asked if he would eat us. But why is there no reaction after I asked? At least refute me. Oh, rest assured on this. Seeing the 2 second-level cleaners turn pale, the Scorpio Bureau Chief, coming back to senses, quickly reassured. From my understanding of him, he shouldn't do something like that. No. What do you mean shouldn't? Isn't the answer supposed to be, definitely won't, for such a question? Chief, with you saying shouldn't, does that mean if Leon gets in the right temperament, he might just eat the both of us? Achoo! After rubbing his recently itchy nose, Leon, dressed in a dark tailcoat, raised his hand to close the carriage window and started complaining to the female reporter opposite him. I really don't know what the road planning department of the royal capital is thinking. Why plant so many winter cypresses along the road? They're, achoo, in full bloom these days, and after a gust of wind, the pollen can cover half the street. It's such a hassle. Just try to bear with it. Handing over a handkerchief, The female reporter, also in formal dress, began to console him. The sky clipper to the Kralik Kingdom is already arranged. Once you're on board, there won't be so much pollen. Let's hope so. Looking at the roadside winter cypress, with buds full of pale red little balls due to the warming climate, Leon couldn't help but sigh in frustration. Although he and his siblings aren't blood-related, they all sneeze terribly when exposed to pollen. And because their residence is street-facing, the past few days when the royal capital's winter cypress started releasing pollen, the Ryan family's sneezing didn't stop from morning till night. Except for Anna, who's somewhat adapted. He and the two little rascals constantly had red noses, truly putting them through the ringer. Somehow it seems a bit odd. The female reporter watched as Leon took the handkerchief to cover his nose, looking a little better, and couldn't help but blink, a hint of doubt appearing in her eyes. The winter cypresses planted along the kingdom's roads should be the ballflower cypress of Kingdom of Orleson, a very common city plant, widely found across the western 9 nations including Black Forest, Molna, and Orleson, with a cultivation history of almost 1,000 years. Having coexisted with this plant for over a millennium, most people in the western 9 nations have become accustomed to its pollen. Usually, only the people from the 3 eastern nations across the sea, unfamiliar with the plant, sneeze uncontrollably upon encountering its pollen. Leon, with a vague guess in her mind, glancing at Leon's black hair and eyes, the female reporter couldn't help but ask, "Are you?" Toot! Just as the female reporter was about to say something, the carriage they were in began to slow down gradually, the melodious steam whistle covering her voice completely. What happened? After the steam carriage came to a complete stop and the whistle ceased, Leon, still covering his nose with the handkerchief, asked somewhat puzzled, "Were you about to ask me something?" "It's nothing." Upon hearing Leon's inquiry, the female reporter hesitated briefly, then shook her head and said, "I just wanted to tell you, there's no winter cypress in the Kralik Kingdom, hardly any plants even, so you won't have to worry about hay fever there. Perhaps it's better not to mention it yet, as his reaction to winter cypress pollen and his black hair and eyes do resemble those of people from that country. Yet there are also people in the kingdom with these traits. It might be a bit hasty to deduce his origins based solely on hair color and pollen allergies. According to my understanding, due to experiments by the Aquarius director, Leon not only lost his original life, but also his memories, a pain that's likely to be permanent in his heart. If these 2 traits could help me uncover Leon's original background and find his lost life, it would be a joyous event. However, if my assumptions are incorrect, or even if somewhat accurate but unable to confirm his true identity, it would be like tearing open a healed wound, bringing him false hope and additional pain, which indeed seems quite hurtful. Is that so? That would be wonderful. Not aware that the female reporter was contemplating helping him find his roots, nor imagining that a pollen allergy caused such musings, Leon breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing there would be no pollen in the Kralik Kingdom. Subsequently, he disembarked with a look of relief, joining the delegation heading into the boarding tower, while curiously asking in a low voice, "Nicole, since the Kralik Kingdom doesn't allow many outsiders in, and the kingdom's records on it aren't thorough, could you tell me what it's like there?" The Kralik Kingdom? Following Leon, the female reporter tried to recall and then spoke with slightly furrowed brows. "I'm not too sure how to describe it. Although Kralik looks round from outside, it's not a fixed shape. If I must compare, it's like a huge Rubik's Cube made entirely of steel and earth." "Oh right. A Rubik's Cube is a toy with 6 sides, each with 9 small squares of different colors that can be twisted around. Kralik children play with these from a young age." I've seen a Rubik's Cube before." Leon blinked upon hearing this, then continued to ask, "I recall you mentioned that the core buildings there are separate hive-like blocks, connected by slides and docking rails, capable of moving up and down using hover crystals. So, where is the royal palace of Kralik Kingdom? In the center of this hexagonal hive Rubik's Cube? And what about Adify 01? In which block is it located?" "Hard to say." The female reporter shook her head and said, "There are no parallel relationships between the blocks in Kralik Kingdom. They can stack up and down, These regions are broadly categorized as residential, research, habitation, production, administration, and military zones. Without major relocation, these hexagonal zones spread throughout the kingdom like clock hands, with 6 of each type per time zone. With the upper city always stationed above due to hover crystals, in the opposite direction of the lower half, the entire Kralik kingdom consists of 36 districts multiplied by 24 time zones, totaling 864 movable blocks. The Kralik Palace and the area housing the Adify 01 body are likely among those 144 administrative blocks and 144 research blocks. So it's a 1 out of 144 choice, and you have to do it twice. How am I supposed to find a bazaar here? After hearing the incredibly complicated district arrangement of Kralik Kingdom, Leon couldn't help but rub his temples, muttering speechlessly as he boarded the Sky Clipper. Whoever designed this must be crazy. Over 800 districts, and they occasionally change positions. How do people in Kralik Kingdom find their way? What's so hard about that? Glancing at Leon oddly, the female reporter replied, "Each block has a number. For instance, where the Gemini branch is located is Administrative District number 38, whereas I lived in Residential District number 19. Each day when going to work, I only needed to enter my desired district number into the directional machine and follow the guidance all the way there." Okay, maybe I spoke a bit too fast. After listening to the explanation from the female reporter, Leon couldn't help but awkwardly scratch the back of his head. Then, under the guidance of the flight attendants, he sat down by the Sky Clipper's window and continued to ask, "So, you're saying that as long as we find Research Zone 001 and the Administrative Zone, we'll be able to find the royal family and Adify 01? Theoretically, yes." The female reporter nodded at his words, then somewhat helplessly reminded him, "But to know the exact location of those two places, you'll first have to ask for directions on the route finder. And even if we could get in, just typing the numbers for Zone 001 would already attract the attention of Adify 01. Indeed, this is quite a troublesome matter." Upon hearing her reminder, Leon pondered slightly before speaking. "The palace should be easier to deal with. I'm carrying a prince's identity. According to international correspondence conventions, the Kralik Kingdom must also send a royal family member to receive us. At that time, I can remember the other person's soul vibrations and track them to find the location of the palace's Administrative Zone 001. But the Research Zone is a bit of a headache. Do you know anyone who can access Research Zone 001? No, I don't." The female reporter shook her head, her expression slightly apologetic as she said, "The important zones in Kralik Kingdom are mostly closed off to each other. If there's nothing unusual, I only move between my residential area, Gemini Branch's Administrative Zone, and some living areas. So I rarely come into contact with people from the Research Zone." Wait. At this point, she seemed to recall something, furrowed her brows in thought, then said excitedly, "I remember now. Living Zone 039 is a green park. I went there once to handle a case involving a suspected abnormal object and met a very capable scholar. He might have the credentials to enter Research Zone 001. A scholar eligible to enter Research Zone 001? Upon hearing the reporter's words, Leon was instantly intrigued and asked curiously, "Where does he live? How can we find him?" "I don't know where he lives, nor am I sure how to find him." "What's his name then? What's he called?" It's been years. I've forgotten his name, or maybe I didn't even ask back then." "Seriously, so all you know is that he's a scientist and might be eligible but nothing else? Then why even mention it?" "I'm not familiar with him. We just happened to meet once, and I honestly don't remember the details." Seeing Leon's speechless expression, clearly holding back a torrent of complaints, the female reporter couldn't help but blush slightly and quickly added, "But I still remember his research findings. Maybe we can find him through that." "Research findings?" "Yes." After trying hard to recall the situation, the female reporter somewhat uncertainly said, "I remember it was either summer or autumn, We received a report at the Bureau saying that strange sounds were often heard around the park in Living Zone 039. According to the report, although there was no one around, strange sounds of a man constantly asking if anyone could hear him were coming from bushes, public toilets, and trees. And since I was on duty at the Bureau that week, I took my stuff and visited the park, squatting overnight by the tree near the public toilet, where I waited for a slightly shabby-looking man. Was he the scholar? No, he was a homeless man hired by that scholar. The female reporter shook her head and said, "The homeless man said someone paid him a bit of money and gave him a map, instructing him to wait in various places like water, trees, bushes, and public toilets to see if he could hear anything. Then, I took the homeless man and followed the map back, finding a man with a strange iron rod on his back by the tree near the park entrance. When I found him, he refused to come down from the tree, saying he would lose the signal." Lose the signal? Upon hearing this, Leon suddenly grasped the situation and, somewhat amused, asked, "Is his research a device that enables long-distance communication?" "Huh? How did you know?" Surprised, the female reporter incredulously asked, "Do you know him? Or have you seen something similar before?" "I've seen something somewhat similar." After giving a vague answer, Leon mused, "I can probably guess what his research is about. If he truly has come up with something useful, he'll certainly have a place in Research Zone 001. But if he's likely a scholar from Research Zone 001, wouldn't our rash actions to find or track him draw the attention of Atify 01? Of course not." The female reporter blinked at these words, somewhat puzzled as she replied, "Aren't you a prince? Just change the mission objective of the delegation. Since you call the shots in the delegation, tell the reception side of Kralik Kingdom that Kingdom wants to purchase a set of similar devices. After receiving and testing the samples, express great satisfaction with them, then request to meet the scholar who's behind this technology. Wouldn't that settle it? Right? I could use my status as a Prince Plus ambassador." Prompted by the female reporter, Leon immediately realized that he didn't necessarily have to rely on abnormal actions to solve problems. His official prince status was often sufficient, sometimes even more convenient. Sigh. Even without a reminder, I should have thought of this plan myself. It seems I've been using muscle solutions for uncertainties lately, and that reliance has left my mind a bit idle. You're absolutely right. Secretly reminding himself to use his brain more and to avoid becoming a brute, Leon noted down the matter of acquiring the phone. Then he somewhat admiringly praised, "Truly, a wise one among the foolish. I never expected your mind to be so sharp. I underestimated you before." Though genuinely complimented, for some reason, she felt as if she was being cruelly insulted. Parsing Leon's words, the female reporter couldn't help but glare in return. "What do you mean, didn't expect my mind to be effective? Did you always think I was an idiot?" Well, it's not that you're dumb. Being fooled by an old fox like the Aquarius director isn't entirely your fault. However, based on your past performances, you've not exactly seemed bright." "Damn you." Reading between the lines of Leon's stifled expressions, the female reporter felt a bit suffocated. But just when she was about to argue for a fair assessment of her intelligence, a loud explosion suddenly erupted in the cabin. A masked man, holding a somewhat makeshift nail gun, fired and shattered the panel above the passengers. Then, with fierce eyes, he shouted, "Don't move! This sky clipper is now under our control." What? Hearing this standard declaration, Leon's mind blanked briefly, then, with an utterly dumbfounded expression, exchanged a glance with the female reporter. "Seriously, although my luck is bad, how did we encounter a hijacking right after takeoff? And they're hijacking an entire diplomatic mission too? Could it be any more ridiculous? Everyone sit down. No standing up." Unaware that the sky clipper he hijacked had 2 VIP passengers on board, the skinny, tall bandit wielded a nail gun he somehow managed to bring aboard, gesturing with it as he shouted, "You're all my hostages now. Someone immediately change the course of this skyship, or else I'll..." At this point, the bandit hesitated briefly, glancing around at the positions in the VIP cabin before naturally aiming the gun at Leon, who was wearing a luxurious outfit, seated with a beautiful companion by his side in the best spot, and threatened harshly. "Or else I'll shoot him." I knew I'd be the one he'd target. Looking at the dark barrel pointed at him, Leon was silent for a moment before sighing inwardly. He wasn't afraid. Not to mention, sitting beside him was Nicole. The Sky Clipper had just left the royal capital's vicinity not too long ago, so his undying body was still effective. Even if he took a bullet, it wouldn't matter. What was truly frustrating was his unfortunate tendency to get into trouble, which was as consistent as ever. According to Senior Tom, the reason for his bad luck was that the will of this world had deemed him a harmful existence, always wanting to eliminate him. But the world's way of dealing with him wasn't a meteor falling from the sky, but arranging such a hijacking and sending a bandit with a homemade nail gun. This was quite humorous. "Hurry up!" Seemingly convinced that Leon was the most important person in the VIP cabin. The bandit, whose hand trembled, placed his finger on the trigger, sweat covering his forehead as he angrily threatened. "If you don't want to die, have your people go to the control room and steer the skyship in the direction I say." Seeing the bandit in front of him, visibly tense and sliding facecloth due to sweat, Leon couldn't help but find it amusing. With a kind expression, he reminded him, "Your facecloth is slipping. You should pull it up." "Ah, thanks." Hearing Leon's words, the bandit instinctively adjusted his soaked facecloth and even politely thanked him. However, the next second, realizing his foolishness, the bandit's forehead visible outside the facecloth turned visibly red, as he angrily asked, "Are you messing with me?" "I'm not messing with you, just offering a kind reminder." As a fellow skyship hijacker, Leon couldn't help but criticize, observing the bandit displaying some immature techniques. "When choosing a facecloth, what were you thinking? Why pick one that's not breathable? It's covering your mouth and nose so thoroughly, and you're stuck with it for hours. Don't you feel stifled?" "Aye. Moreover, your facecloth is made of thick gauze. Once soaked with sweat, it loosens, even if you tie a knot at the back of your head. It'll still slip down, requiring constant adjustment. If you're serious about masking up, going to a department store to buy thick stockings would be more suitable." "Wait, are you insane or something?" Observing Leon, who despite having been held at gunpoint by the bandit, was neither panicking nor sending someone to take over the skyship control room, but instead was teaching him how to mask up, the humorous bandit became enraged. "Stop talking nonsense. Get your people to the control room. Steer the skyship as I demand, or I'll shoot you." Giving a gesture to the female journalist to remain still, Leon, who had just decided to use brains more than brawn, raised his hands in a surrender gesture, then curiously asked, "I bet you haven't been to the skyship control room, have you?" The bandit hesitated slightly before cautiously retorting, "How do you know?" Leon explained amusedly, "Because if you had been, you'd know that the main work of those in the skyship control room is actually weather recording. This thing is automatically steered. They don't manage the steering at all." Ha! Befuddled by Leon's response, the bandit beneath the facecloth opened and closed his mouth slightly, momentarily at a loss for words. "If this thing is automatically steered, then what exactly have I hijacked? Moreover, if you don't mind, may I ask?" Seeing the bandit's confused expression, Leon inquired calmly, "What is your purpose in hijacking this skyship? Could you explain?" "It's okay, just say it. Your purpose won't be achieved after hijacking since you can't change the course." "Well, even if you don't want to tell, I can guess myself. Given that you don't know the people in the VIP cabin, it probably isn't to hold them for ransom, so who are you threatening with this skyship? Or are you planning to crash it somewhere?" "Aye." After hearing Leon's words, the disillusioned masked bandit was silent for a while, then lowered the nail gun weakly, his voice somber. "I wanted revenge on Kralik Kingdom, using this skyship to crash into Kralik Kingdom's palace." "Wow." Looking at the bandit who originally intended to pull the catch, Leon raised an eyebrow, then inquired puzzledly. Then how exactly were you planning to escape from the skyship at the start? Parachuting ahead of time? Aren't you afraid someone would change the course after you jump? I wasn't planning to run. Upon hearing Leon's words, the masked bandit, seemingly provoked into recalling painful memories, gritted his teeth and said, "Since boarding the skyship, I hadn't planned on getting off. Trading my life for the entire royal family of Kralik Kingdom was worth it. The spirit's commendable. But there's something I don't understand." Leon nodded slightly, then curiously asked, "Since you weren't planning to live, why the mask then?" "Right, I was planning to die, so why mask up?" Awakened by Leon's words, the masked bandit finally realized, tore off his soaked facecloth, tossed it aside, then crouched powerlessly, covering his face as he began to sob. "Honestly, you're quite a talent." Watching the bandit cry beside his seat due to his own stupidity, Leon patted him on the shoulder, then shook his head and sighed. One can't act solely based on passion. Even as a bandit, you should learn well and remember to use your brain. Moreover, although you probably don't know, I'll still ask, do you even know where Kralik Kingdom's palace is? Where's the palace? Upon hearing Leon's questioning, the bandit halted his sobbing, then said blankly, "Does it need finding? Isn't it generally the tallest and most beautiful structure in the middle of a kingdom? The palace." "Good. Indeed, I didn't overestimate your intelligence." Of course, not having received any information about the location of the Kralik Kingdom Palace, Leon couldn't help but curl his lips in resignation. Then, too lazy to explain to a hijacker that the palace of the Kralik Kingdom was actually mobile, he straightened his wrinkled clothes and sat back down. Meanwhile, a female reporter who had been listening in was trying hard to restrain her laughter, her cheeks flushed. She leaned over, unable to contain herself, and whispered with amusement, "Why bother talking so much with him? You could just knock him out, couldn't you?" "I could definitely knock him out, but if, when encountering problems, your first instinct isn't to think it through, and instead you instinctively rely on force, it can easily lead to, At this point, Leon paused slightly, glanced at the female reporter, then looked away and continued with a straight face. "It can easily lead to becoming a bit of a dim-witted brute, so I try to solve problems with wisdom as much as I can." Damn, talking halfway through, then suddenly pausing and glancing at me. "What do you mean by that? By the way?" Under the slightly annoyed gaze of the female reporter, Leon tilted his head slightly, looked at the somewhat blank-faced hijacker guy beside him, and asked, "I remember at the beginning you said we took over the Sky Clipper, so you should have a partner, right? Where is your partner?" "My partner." Hearing Leon's words, the hijacker guy froze momentarily, then shook his head hastily. "You must be mistaken. I don't have a partner." "All right, not only does he have a partner, but the partner is probably still lurking among the passengers, yet to show up." Leon nodded in response, but didn't question further. Instead, he touched the ram's horn protruding from his cuff and quickly scanned the souls inside the Sky Clipper. Sure enough, after resolving the hijacking crisis with just a few words, although most people didn't dare to speak, they were secretly relieved. Among them, a soul full of resentment and agitation was as conspicuous as a xenon headlamp on a heavy-duty truck. "Your partner is you, right?" Turning to look at a young girl dressed rather plainly, 3 rows away, Leon smiled and asked, "And it seems like you are the mastermind? He's just the one doing the labor? Considering how he defends you and the fact that you two resemble each other, are you siblings?" This person, so terrifying, facing Leon, who was smiling gently but seemed to have a demon's shadow dancing behind him, making her heart tremble, the girl in the seat didn't answer. Instead, she stood up directly, pulled out a second homemade nail gun, and aimed it at Leon, gritting her teeth. "You're a big shot, aren't you? If you don't want a hole in your head, you'd better send your men to the control room and help us take over this Sky Clipper." "But this Sky Clipper is auto." "Don't lie to me. The similarly slender young girl shouted angrily. If it's just for weather recording, does it need 7 or 8 people in the control room? Even if the Sky Clipper is truly automatic, the people in the control room must have a way to adjust the course. TSK, she actually realized that. This girl seems to be a bit smarter than the hijacker guy. Upon hearing the young girl's words, the hijacker guy sprang up from the floor, glaring at Leon with a mix of shock and anger. You tricked me? I didn't trick you, just didn't disclose everything. Additionally, replying to the hijacker guy, Leon then turned to the gaunt, seemingly 2 years younger than Anna hijacker girl, and raised an eyebrow. You seem a bit more cultured than your brother, so you should know that the position of the Kralik Kingdom's palace isn't fixed, right? How to find the palace is none of your business. Shooting a wary glance at Leon, the hijacker girl shouted sternly, raising her gun. What you need to do now is send someone to the control room and take control of the Sky Clipper, or I'll kill you. But even if I listen to you, wouldn't I still end up dead? Leon retorted. You two plan a kamikaze attack with this Sky Clipper. As a passenger on board, wouldn't I still end up dead? As long as you do as you're told, you won't die. Seeing Leon still not cooperating, the hijacker girl flipped the safety on the nail gun, bit her lip and shouted angrily. We've checked. There are 12 sets of safety boats underneath the aft compartment equipped with flotation airbags, enough for everyone aboard to leave. As long as you cooperate with us, not a single person on the Sky Clipper will die. That's actually the truth. Glancing at the hijacker girl's soul, Leon blinked and said, So when your brother was masked, you didn't stop him because you planned to have him keep living, while you, who can find the palace location, stay here. Shut up. Seeing her plan being laid bare in a few words, the increasingly flustered hijacker girl stomped her foot and shouted sharply, You mustn't speak again. Hurry and send your men to the control room, or I'll shoot. Then go ahead and shoot. Sneaking a glance at the nail gun in the hijacker girl's hands, Leon chuckled and said, As long as you pull the trigger and manage to fire a nail, I'll immediately have people take over the control room, and you can steer wherever you want. How about it? Looks like I guessed right, your guns can't fire at all. Seeing the hijacker girl's lips move twice, a hint of despair sweeping through her bright eyes, Leon smiled and said, I often handle guns too. Though your gun's exteriors seem fine, even restoring the rifling in the barrels, the paint on the junctions is suspiciously off, and the air tank dimensions are problematic, all just high-grade replicas. And come to think of it, though the kingdom's security is pretty lousy, they are diligent enough in their searches. It's unlikely they would allow 2 real guns on board, much less miss 2 of them entirely. What? Fake guns? Noticing the hijacker girl biting her lips pale and the nail gun she daringly held showing no action, the guests in the VIP cabin, who had been silently shaking with fear, finally started to speak up. Scared me to death. They're fake. Bastard. Scaring people with 2 fake guns. The overweight merchant beside the hijacker girl, wearing a silk frock and weighing close to 300 pounds, stood up abruptly, extending a large hand that seemed ready to squeeze out oil, and slapped fiercely. You damned. Ah! Everybody freeze. Covering the distance in a couple strides, kicking over the fat merchant, the hijacker guy pulled a small horn-handled knife from his coat and brandished it at the surrounding passengers, roaring terribly. I may not have a gun, but I have a knife. Anyone who dares to touch my sister, I'll, So she really is your sister, and by the way, pulling a long-neglected sniper rifle from the mirror world, flicking off the safety with his finger, Leon asked with a smiling face at the dumbfounded hijacker guy. Want to guess whether my gun's real or fake? I'm really very sorry. Looking at the robber siblings with their hands tied to the chair by belts and their faces looking exceptionally grim, the security chief who rushed over from the auxiliary cabin couldn't help but wipe the cold sweat off his forehead and then bowed deeply without hesitation. It's our inspection that wasn't up to par, causing you such a fright. It's all right. It's not your fault. Upon hearing this, Leon smiled and then, while playing with the fake gun in his hand, spoke. The guns they're holding aren't real. not even made of metal. They're painted wood, probably disassembled into parts and smuggled up mixed in with the baggage clutter. Because there were no metal pieces to begin with, the strong magnetic scales you used to check the luggage didn't cause the weights to change, allowing these 2 fake guns to be smuggled on board. For such a method of bypassing inspection, unless you can search every traveler's luggage, it's something that can't truly be avoided, so you did your best. This? Incredibly sorry. Thank you for your understanding. Seeing that Leon didn't seem intent on pursuing the matter further, the security chief of the Sky Clipper exhaled a long breath, gave a fierce look at the robber siblings, then indicated for the security team behind him to grab them, and again bowed to Leon and the lady reporter saying, "Your Excellency Prince, regarding today's incident, we are deeply, deeply sorry. I'll take these 2 away for now and ensure an explanation for you. No need to rush." Raising a hand to gesture downward, blocking the security guard wanting to make arrests, Leon smiled and said, "There are some questions I'd like to ask them. I wonder if there is a quiet private room on the airship. If so, could you please arrange one for me?" "There is." Hearing Leon's request, the security chief hesitated for a moment before reminding, "But these 2 are, after all, hijackers of the airship. If you were to be harmed staying in the same room with them—" "I won't be." Leon shook his head, replied firmly, "If I caught them once, I can catch them again. Just go ahead and arrange the room." "This? Since you insist, all right then." Seeing His Excellency the Prince adamantly insistent, the security chief, who still drew a salary from the kingdom's transportation department, naturally dared not continue opposing. But fearing Leon might be careless and truly overturn on the hijackers, the security chief directed someone to fetch several thick ropes used for tying airbags from the storage, bound the robber siblings like dumplings, and only then led Leon and the lady reporter to a small room, earnestly introducing, "Your Excellency Prince, this room was originally for balancing weight to prevent the airship from rolling. Though it's a bit off-center, it's definitely quiet enough. I'll keep watch at a distance, ensuring no disturbance for you." "Thank you." Nodding in thanks to the security chief, Leon closed the door from inside. Then, smiling, addressed the robber siblings tossed on the cabin floor, bound like 2 grub larvae. "Shall we chat?" "Bah!" Seemingly angered by Leon's smile, the robber brother, successfully becoming a grub, scooted on the floor to shield his sister, glaring at Leon with anger, replied, "You liar! We've got nothing to chat about with you. Saying I'm a liar is a bit too much, don't you think?" Leon, hearing this, blinked, then smilingly retorted, "Since you appeared, I haven't uttered a single false word, have I? How does that make me a liar? Besides, I don't even know you guys. I was just on an ordinary trip, yet you pointed guns at my head, threatening me to do this and that. Even if I actually deceived you under such circumstances, it doesn't seem really wrong, does it?" Indeed, hearing Leon's retort, the robber brother couldn't help but feel uncertain, mumbled twice and closed his mouth. Meanwhile, the robber sister, whom he shielded, observed Leon's expression for a moment, then stared fixedly into his eyes, took the initiative to speak. "Sir, if you let him go, I can take you to find Kralik Kingdom's palace." "Oh?" Hearing the robber sister's words, Leon raised his brow slightly, giving her a surprised look. This kid seems a bit capable? After failing to hijack an airship and being tied like a grub, most people's minds should already be overloaded, but not only did she calm down, she even had the capacity to think through her idea and was actually trying to negotiate. Although kids in this world tend to mature early, for a child around 12 or 13, who hasn't experienced much, this calmness and rationality are no ordinary feats. At least she's already surpassed Nicole. "She's addressing you? Why are you staring at me?" Feeling a bit uncomfortable under Leon's gaze, instinctively feeling he might be thinking something inappropriate, the lady reporter couldn't help but glare back, then turned her head slightly, curiously asking, "How do you know the 2 of us are trying to find Kralik Kingdom's palace?" "See, that's what I said." Seeing the robber sister slightly relax her tense body, showing a hint of joy in her eyes after hearing the lady reporter's question, Leon couldn't help but shake his head, looking somewhat helplessly at the lady reporter. Your brain truly got beaten by this kid. Before you asked this question, she didn't even know what you wanted. She was just making a blind guess and probing. I could have coaxed a bit and probably extracted the answer. But with your question, she now knows what we want. She'll certainly clutch onto her only bargaining chip. Without a substantial promise like releasing her brother, she's certainly not going to talk. I guessed. After glancing at the slightly clueless, innocent-looking reporter, the robber sister, while thankful for the not-so-smart one here, began to flatter, saying, With your temperament, both of you do not seem ordinary, nor appear to have ruthless dispositions. It's unlikely you'd waste time on two failed robbers. So I surmised you might be trying to find something out, and among what I know, the only thing that might help distinguished people like yourselves is the location of the Kralik Palace. No wonder. After listening to the robber sister's explanation, the lady reporter nodded with a face of realization, then glanced in Leon's direction. Her bright eyes sparkling with some surprised light, exchanged a look meaning. Leon. See, this kid. She's so smart. We should say, perhaps it's not her being clever but a bit of your naivete? Watching the lady reporter being dexterously led around by a half-grown kid, Leon couldn't help but rub his temple, feeling this fieldwork might not go all too smoothly. Let's not mention anything else, but for Nicole's brains to survive in the cleanup bureau thus far, likely with a lot assistance from her dad. I can already imagine when she was out executing tasks, the Aquarius director trailing behind, helplessly and hastily cleaning up after her, and now this task of cleaning up has plainly fallen onto my shoulders. Come to think of it, I'm doing the work her dad should be doing now, so does this make me her step? Unaware that Leon was eyeing him hungrily, and not knowing that his secrets had been uncovered, the female journalist started chatting with the hijacker girl after a few exchanges. I remember, when your brother first entered the VIP cabin, he fired a shot at the panel above, right? Recalling the previous situation, the female journalist curiously said, That shot scared the passengers, but after Leon checked, didn't he say that you two had fake guns? So how did the panel break? Because I had prepared a lump of plasticine mixed with glycerin beforehand. Although she wanted to talk seriously first, seeing the journalist's eager face, the hijacker girl reluctantly explained, That stuff explodes when shaken and is often used for mining. I stole a little from the mine, mixed it into plasticine, and secretly stuck it on when putting away the luggage. My brother's gun was a toy, but it could shoot marbles. As long as he aimed at the lump of plasticine and shot, the panel, which was thin glass, would shatter directly, looking like it was shot by a gun. So that's how it was. After her doubts were cleared, a satisfied expression appeared on the journalist's face. Probably due to her professional curiosity, she couldn't help but ask further. By the way, how did you come up with this method? Did someone teach you? No one taught me. I learned it myself. Though anxious to negotiate terms quickly, the move where Leon exposed her secrets earlier caused significant psychological pressure on the hijacker girl. Afraid to speak to Leon directly, with the journalist being her only hope, the hijacker girl quelled her sense of urgency and patiently accepted the interview, saying, Our family are Cheshire miners, where one of the Kralik Kingdom's hover crystal mines is. I learned a little from watching them mix glycerin with clay to mine since childhood. You're amazing. Seemingly fond of this cute girl with a sweet tongue, the journalist affectionately patted her head and continued to inquire softly. Besides your brother, do you have anyone else in your family? A grandmother. Hearing the journalist's question, the hijacker girl's expression darkened, and she replied with cold eyes. But she's probably dead now. Her lungs are full of dust from the hover crystal mine area. She was already beyond saving before we escaped. Oh, this. Surprised by the answer, the journalist's expression froze slightly. Then she said apologetically, I'm sorry. I didn't know it was like this. It's okay. We've accepted this outcome long ago. If you've already accepted it, then why hijack the Sky Clipper? Seeing the unique stubbornness in the hijacker girl's eyes, the journalist fell silent. then couldn't help but look at Leon with a pleading gaze. Is she telling the truth? If so, can you let them go and not pursue the hijacking of the Sky Clipper? What? Why are you looking at me like that? Confused by the journalist's gaze, Leon, who was fiddling with the lie detector horns, glared at her annoyed. Darn it, I'm a good person too. Don't make it look like I'm ruthless and out to get them. I never said I would do anything to them from the start, did I? These two people seem not bad. Noticing the exchange of glances between Leon and the journalist made the hijacker girl bite her lips slightly. Then she clenched her fists tightly and lowered her head, saying softly, I don't know what you want, but if you're looking for Kralik Palace's location, I'm willing to stay and help as long as you let my brother go. No way. I don't agree. Unable to hold back, the hijacker brother shouted anxiously, arching his upper body while pouting. We agreed, you. Take a break. Stuffing a handkerchief into the hijacker brother's mouth to silence him, Leon pulled over a box to sit on, rubbed his throbbing temple, and asked, Let me summarize. So basically, Kralik Kingdom is mining hover crystals in your hometown, causing you to become orphans. You managed to escape from the mines, and now you want revenge against Kralik Kingdom. Is that about right? Yes. After hearing Leon's words, the hijacker girl nodded, then replied with eyes full of hatred. I read in a book that Kralik Kingdom is closed off from the outside world, almost impossible to enter by land, except for a few irregularly open harbors. Only Sky Clippers can reach there. After discussing with my brother, we sold the 2 small pieces of hover crystal we stole when escaping, bought tickets for the Sky Clipper and these things, planning to avenge our grandmother and all the people of Cheshire, just as I guessed. Hearing this, Leon couldn't help rubbing his forehead. Although Soul Vision proved the hijacker girl spoke the truth, he still frowned and pressed on to prevent any oversight. How long have you been escaped from Cheshire? More than 2 years. Then why didn't you think of revenge at that time? And why are you suddenly ready to act now? Because earlier we didn't know how to take revenge. The hijacker girl said sadly. We live in Creekwood Town outside the royal capital, not far from the boarding tower. Last month, when rebels attacked the boarding tower and burned the Sky Clipper, we could see the over 100-meter fireball from where we lived, inspiring my idea for revenge. Good grief, you actually got your revenge inspiration from me. Feeling helpless, Leon asked a few more questions but found no suspicious details, leading him to sigh and question the world will's reason for arranging this hijack. Given the hijacker brother's antics, it was impossible to harm him, but the hijacker girl's tragic circumstances left things uncertain. If he dug out more troubling facts, like uncovering Kralik Kingdom's dark deeds under its prosperity, he would inevitably be drawn into a massive dilemma. Let's talk about something else first. After untying the hijacker girl, Leon, mindful of his headache, asked, I understand why you hijacked the Sky Clipper. Now can you tell me how you plan to find Kralik Kingdom Palace's location? Upon hearing Leon's question, the hijacker girl hesitated slightly, not answering immediately. Instead, she rolled up her sleeve, revealing a small section of thin, dry arm covered with dark blue blood spots embedded tightly in her skin. With the dust from the hover crystals in my body. After showing Leon and his companion her arm covered in blood spots, under the female reporter's horrified gaze, the robber girl quietly explained, I was born in the hover crystal mining area. Even before I was born, my whole body was covered in this dust. These things are part of my body. Grandma says hover crystals have an attractant nature. Once activated, these tiny dust particles will naturally gather towards larger hover crystal masses. Every year, people in the mining area get too close to active hover crystals and have the dust in their bodies sucked out, tearing their throats and lungs apart. And those hover crystals in the Kralik Kingdom are constantly in a low-intensity activated state. The closer I get to there, the more my body hurts. So if I try a few more times, I'm sure I can find the Kralik Palace's location. To rely on such a method, after hearing the robber girl's method for finding the Kralik Palace, even though Leon had somewhat prepared himself mentally, he couldn't help but fall into silence. The robber girl hadn't purposely talked about the life she and her robber brother had before escaping from Cheshire, but from these occasional words, it wasn't hard to imagine what kind of life they had been living. I have a few more questions to confirm. After a moment of silence, Leon spoke again. There are over 800 districts in the Kralik Kingdom. Each district is embedded with hover crystals. How can you be sure that the ones attracting you are the hover crystals beneath the Kralik Palace? Rely on the mining area's numbering. The robber girl replied calmly. Because once activated, hover crystals have an attractant nature. So to avoid mutual interference, the hover crystals below those districts are mined in different ways. The explosives ratio, mining equipment, and cleansing materials all differ. So in theory, the hover crystals mined from each area are different. My family is from mining area 1. Grandma heard the supervisor from the mine say that the hover crystals from area 1 are specifically for the royal family's district. I see. After listening to the robber girl, Leon nodded slightly, while the female reporter, having recovered from her shock, suddenly stepped forward and grabbed the frighteningly slender arm, speaking somewhat incoherently. How can this be? These hover crystals are actually so. Do you feel pain? Not really. Hearing the female reporter's question, the robber girl shook her head and said, I'm young. My body can still grow a bit. As long as I eat more, I can bear the effects brought by these dust particles. Probably when my bones stop growing and my internal organ size stops increasing, then they'll start wearing down my body. Wearing down. Rotting away. The robber girl pointed to the blood spots on her arm and replied steadily. Uncle Masby told Grandma that when my body matures and the rate of cell replacement decreases, if it's not enough to replace these parts before rejection occurs, these blood spots will grow from the size of grains of rice to the size of beans. Then the skin will also fail to maintain due to rejection from below, resulting in large areas of ulceration. After about a year, when these ulcers grow to pigeon egg size, my internal organs will also start having problems, and I'd probably die within half a year. So, from the time her body stops growing taller to being tortured to death by these dust particles, there's only a year and a half? Looking at the girl in front of her, who appeared unusually calm as though she wasn't talking about herself, the female reporter couldn't help but clench her hands tightly. Then how old are you this year? 14. 14. Upon hearing the robber girl's answer, the female reporter couldn't help but bite her lip and then involuntarily averted her gaze, not knowing how to look at her anymore. Even if nutrition could keep up, a person's rapid growth phase usually stops around 17 or 18, and girls stop sooner than boys, some even as early as 15 or 16. If this child is similar, then her life is already on a countdown and possibly in less than a year, she'll start being tortured, eventually dying covered in ulcers. So, although she looks underage, she has practically entered a countdown and, like many aged elders, is about to reach the end of her life. Then you all, the female reporter, shocked by the harsh reality, couldn't continue after saying, then you twice, silently covering her mouth, while Leon beside her chimed in, now that you've left the mining area, can't the dust in your body be removed with medicine or some other method as time goes by? Uncle Masby tried. It's useless. The robber girl shook her head. The activation method of hover crystals involves connecting to some form of energy, and Uncle Masby says that humans have energy within their bodies that can be directly absorbed by the hover crystal dust. Children like me, whose blood and organs have dust, are actually considered lucky. If the dust were in the brain or nerves, controlling the body would be impossible, and we'd die right after being born. Who is this Uncle Masby you mentioned? Uncle Masby was a scholar from the Kralik Kingdom. When mentioning the Kralik Kingdom, the robber girl's gaze slightly cooled, but then it turned somewhat complicated. He originally came to treat the overseer's diseases, but after seeing our conditions, he seemed to cause a stir, and then stayed in Cheshire treating many miners for free. My brother and I managed to escape because of his help. And where is he now? I don't know. Maybe he's dead, the robber girl said with a somewhat somber expression. His health wasn't good either, and he was brushed by the hovering dust too. His lungs were worse than Grandma's. When my brother and I escaped, he was already coughing up blood every day. Upon hearing this, Leon couldn't help but close his eyes slightly, falling silent once again, while the female reporter, having composed herself with slightly reddened eyes, said, "Then if you don't go down the mine, what would the overseers from the Kralik Kingdom do to you? Would they take direct action?" "No, the overseers from the Kralik Kingdom only care about whether the mine can operate normally and forbid anyone from leaving casually, and nothing else," the robber girl replied through gritted teeth. "But although they don't take direct action, in Cheshire and other big mining areas, plants can't grow. There are almost no animals, and everything, including food, has to be exchanged for the hover crystal's mind. So if you don't want to starve to death, the only option is to go into the mine and excavate hover crystals." Understanding Cheshire's operational model, the female reporter bit her own lip so hard it left deep white marks, while Leon sighed inwardly, took out a silver knife, and cut the ropes bound around the robber siblings. "I accept your offer." Ding! Accompanied by the subtle sound of a knob turning into a slot on the dashboard, above the docking area of the Kralik Kingdom's airfield, 12 pairs of massive panels quickly slid open to the sides, revealing the densely packed docking stations below. Immediately, the Sky Clipper, with a length exceeding 400 meters and a passenger section suspended beneath measuring over 150 meters, slowly docked into Airport Number 7 under the guidance of one of the docking stations. Finally arrived. When the hatch of the VIP cabin opened and a gust of fresh air rushed in, Leon glanced at the airfield filled with various steel constructions, then slightly bent his waist and stepped out of the cabin door, expressionless as he stepped onto the red plush carpeted escalator. "Welcome, Your Highness." Although due to time constraints, the kingdom's diplomatic mission did not take the special airship of the secret port, but instead the nearest passenger Sky Clipper. The reception standards from the Kralik Kingdom side were still adequately presented on the surface. Even before Leon had completely disembarked from the Sky Clipper, 2 teams of people were already waiting on either side of the escalator. At the moment he appeared, they greeted him in unison. Standing foremost in the honor guard, a youth in lavishly ornate clothes embroidered with half of a mechanical clock on his chest, walked up briskly with a smile, extending his right hand towards Leon. "Lord Leon, I am Andre, the 3rd Prince of the Kralik Kingdom, representing the entirety of the Kralik royal family to welcome your visit." Without even reaching the tiger's mouth, merely grasping half of Leon's palm in a light handshake, the youth who claimed to be the 3rd Prince politely but somewhat assertively arranged. "Due to the rather tight schedule this time, and considering you are surely eager to attend to affairs, I've instructed to skip the overly complicated welcoming ceremonies. Please lead the members of your mission to the cars. The Minister of Foreign Affairs is already awaiting you in Administrative District Number 3. If it was a genuine diplomatic envoy, faced with such somewhat impolite, informative reception, they would likely not have a pleasant expression even if they didn't act up immediately. But Leon said nothing, merely nodded slightly, then led a few other members of his delegation toward the arranged vehicles. It seems this Prince Leon might be someone easy to handle. From Leon's reaction, the youth simply judged his character, and the smile that was barely considered cordial on his face was instantly tinged with a hint of perfunctoriness. He even skipped any further introductions, merely gesturing towards the open hovercar door with an inviting gesture. Could it be that this 3rd prince is actually someone with a rather proud nature? Similarly assessing the character of the youth in extravagant clothing, Leon, who didn't care about the increasingly perfunctory reception, was happy to avoid false pretenses with others, merely glancing at him before boarding the vehicle and seating himself, beginning to close his eyes to rest. However, after both were seated for a while, the hovercar still did not take off. Subsequently, a close aide holding a thick book hurried over from where the other mission members were undergoing identity verification, first bowing respectfully toward the young man with his eyes closed, then frowning slightly as he addressed Leon. "Your Highness, may I ask why your delegation has 2 more people than reported?" Faced with the aide's question, which, though phrased respectfully, was evidently lacking in courtesy, Leon's eyebrows raised slightly before he responded. "The extra ones are my maid and bodyguard who attend to my needs." These two individuals are not official members of the mission and were therefore not reported along with the others. Is there a problem? There is indeed a bit of a problem. Though appearing respectful, the aide's tone was far from polite as he said, "The Kralik Kingdom differs from your country. We are much more meticulous here. All travel requires records, and identity verification cards must be used. Your mission underreported 2 people, so we have 2 fewer identification cards prepared, which may cause you inconvenience." I see. Upon hearing this, Leon turned to look at him and calmly stated, "First, give them my ID card for use. I can use Andre's Highness's ID card, then also take out your ID card. This way, your lack of preparation won't inconvenience us." Do you have any more questions? Of course I do. Seeing Leon solve the issue with just a few words and even shift the blame, along with the third prince's now open eyes looking over with dissatisfaction. The aide's face reddened with displeasure as he argued, "Your Highness, you were the ones who underreported the numbers. It's not I'm not in a good mood right now." After glancing at the pair of siblings who had changed clothes in the distance, Leon interrupted the aide, and with a face tinged with coldness, he announced, "So, let's leave it at that. Don't force me to slap you." Confronted with Leon's reminder, which completely lacked the elegance expected of nobility and was blunt to the extreme, the aide, already slightly red, turned purple with indignation and said, "You!" Smack! Seeing that he still wouldn't take a hint, Leon, whose mood had been ruined after hearing about the siblings' plight, simply raised his hand and delivered a slap, promptly knocking the clearly provocative aide to the ground, then turned his gaze to the youth seated opposite him in the compartment. "Your Highness Andre, is there a problem with how I handled this?" "It's fine." Casting a glance at the aide on the floor clutching his face, clearly slapped senseless, the lavishly dressed youth impatiently instructed, "Don't waste time. Quickly do as His Highness said. The minister is still waiting." "Okay. All right." Seeing that the third prince had no intention of seeking justice for him, the aide could only pick up the book dropped on the ground, clutch his face, and return to his tasks, while the two inside the compartment once again closed their eyes to rest, reassessing each other mentally. This Prince Leon seems not only not soft at all, but potentially astonishingly tough. The aide wasn't enraged after being slapped, so it seems this third prince isn't naturally proud but simply afraid of trouble? "Everyone, the reason I've gathered you here this time is that I've discovered 2 very dangerous pieces of intelligence." Just as Leon and the third prince sat silently with their eyes closed, proceeding toward Administrative District Number 3, around a long table made from unknown biological bones, a group of mysterious masked figures all stared at the head of the table, listening intently to the person sitting there. The first piece of intelligence is that following the failed operation targeting Pride last time, all 12 Zodiac branch offices of the Cleanup Bureau have started self-examinations, and our existence as the Slaughter King Association may have been completely exposed. What? Upon hearing the host's announcement, the masked figures couldn't help but express their shock, and the Dongya mask, who had previously clashed with the Aquarius director, angrily said, "I told you long ago. That Aquarius director cannot be trusted." Meanwhile, the woman with the black cat mask said hesitantly, "I also think he's very suspicious. Should we reconsider our collaboration with the Aquarius director? But this opportunity is indeed very good. It would be a pity to let it go." "The opportunity is good, but the cost of failure is also great." "Enough. Let's discuss further collaboration with the Aquarius director later. There are more important matters at hand now." After knocking on the table, making everyone quiet down, the individual seated at the head turned to the girl wearing a white owl mask next to them, and with a steady voice announced, "Xue Xiao, while other situations are unclear, the sloth you are responsible for monitoring has been completely exposed, and the Cleanup Bureau's investigators have most likely already arrived.